Yeah, that's my youngest daughter. So, hi everybody. Welcome to the second, hopefully, of a continued series of Street Epistemology community live streams and hangouts on air. I'm going to be hosting it today. My name is Tim Davis. You might have seen me posting on some of the other SE YouTubers' comments or in the private and other Facebook study pages for Street Epistemology. Joining us today is Reed Nicewonder of Cordial Curiosity.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for doing this, Tim. This is very nice.
No problem. And I apologize for the delay. I was having some technical issues on my end. We also have Doug Letkeman. Am I pronouncing that right? From Pine Creek.
Died for a second.
Oh, I think he stepped away. And we also have Jordan and Vincent with us today. Or do either of you guys have YouTube channels, or are you just part of the community at large joining the Hangout today? I don't have a YouTube channel for SE yet. I hope to someday, but I don't have one right now.
I have one that's very eclectic. A lot of it was to present my work, my profession as a cartoonist. But lately I've been doing some atheist or activism things, especially against the Jehovah's Witness religion, which I was brought up in.
Yeah, you were discussing that before we went live for the second time today after I goofed up the first live stream. So I'm sure you probably have some interesting insight to offer there, being a former JW.
Yeah, and SE is very hard with them.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're very entrenched, very insular community. And Jordan, did you want to say hi since you're on as well?
Yeah, sure. I'm Jordan Freed, another community member of SE, and I've been an atheist since 2013, and I've always had a big interest in discussing religion and philosophy and science. And my YouTube channel is not active really at all, but it might be in the future, potentially.
All right, good. Well, thanks for joining. And I also have a pop-out window for the YouTube live chat, so I'll try to keep an eye on that. If anybody watching on YouTube is offering pertinent commentary or questions. So today, I didn't have that much of an agenda other than, I only have one topic, but I think it might take up a good portion of our time today, or we could also do some SE role play or discussing other SE related topics. But the main thing I wanted to bring up, especially since Doug's here, Doug, you can say hi now that you're back. I gave an introduction, didn't realize you weren't here.
Hey, how's it going?
How do you pronounce your last name? Is it Letkeman?
Letkeman. Yeah, like
Letkeman.
Let someone come in.
So Doug is of the Pine Creek YouTube channel. He does SE a little differently. He likes to do like the on-air video chats instead of hoofing it like Reed and Anthony do. But Doug tends to focus on apologists and pastors. I think that adds an interesting flavor to it. So.
Yeah, I like to go for the big fish, the ones that are the most closed ever.
Well, yeah, that's actually a good segue, because I wanted to talk about common criticisms of street epistemology. There have been some relevant Facebook threads that really brought this topic to focus for me, particularly an apologist from the Capturing Christianity Facebook page, Cameron Bertuzzi, has leveled some interesting criticisms of street epistemology. So I'm just going to kind of introduce the topic and let you guys, I'll jump in maybe a little bit. And feel free, Doug. I know Doug and Reed, you guys have kind of engaged him a little bit on the Facebook group, the Learn Street Epistemology Facebook group, or the Chat with an SE Facebook group.
Yeah.
But his first criticism kind of dovetails into what Doug was saying. And he uses Reed's example on his Cordial Curiosity channel of the video with Tia. He says, "Oh, you guys are just picking on people that don't really have a solid foundation for their beliefs." So I think his criticism there is SE. I think his criticism is kind of twofold. Is one, SE targets it's like basically we're doing the same thing that somebody like Ray Comfort does, where he ambushes somebody, does a Gish Gallop, and tries to gotcha moment. And then his second criticism is a little bit more complicated because he tends to obfuscate it with some philosophy word salad, but that's essentially boils down to, you guys say you're street epistemologists, but you don't really understand epistemology, so therefore you shouldn't be doing epistemology. And I mean, that's kind of like saying, well, you're not an automobile mechanical engineer, so you can't ask the mechanic any questions when he tries to tell you that you need more headlight fluid or something like that. So
can I just be on record and saying that criticism is stupid?
Which one?
the one that you don't know anything about epistemology, so or you haven't studied epistemology formally, so therefore you cannot ask these questions of people. How dare you? Like that to me, it just
No, I agree. I mean, I'm a network engineer. That's that's what pays my bills, and that's like saying, well, my wife's also technically savvy. That'd be like me telling my wife, well, you don't have a degree in computer networking, so you can't properly diagnose what's wrong with the home internet connection. I mean, she's oftentimes, her perspective has brought me insight to say, oh, well, I hadn't considered that. Maybe I could try that.
But that first criticism, I think, is valid. The low-hanging fruit one, the gotcha moment one. I do see some truth in that. I think a lot of times, young kids at university, so forth, they don't have a clue what they believe and why they believe it. But that being said, I still think it's okay to ask these types of questions and get them thinking about it. But I'm not shocked or surprised at all when you see these reactions of these young people just like, whoa, yeah, I never thought of it that way. Like, that's normal. But this is part of the reason why I like to talk to just pastors and apologists and so forth, to kind of say, look, we can go both ways here. Bring me your best. If anybody's listening to this and you're a Christian pastor apologist, come talk to me. I'd love to talk to you. You can even SE me if you want. That's fine. Let's get this conversation started.
Well, and I'm sure Reed would probably like to comment, since we are kind of talking. I use his video as the example, but I would like to say, Doug, I see where you're coming from, Doug, but also I think it would be different if somebody like Reed or myself or Anthony, if we were specifically targeting people who were not grounded in the belief of a specific belief. Yeah. So I think the difference between somebody like Reed and somebody like Ray Comfort is, Reed, if you watch Reed's videos, or Anthony for that matter, if you watch their videos, they never tell somebody what to believe.
Right.
And they don't do this Gish Gallop of just throwing, just ambushing, throwing a bunch of facts without giving you time to respond to each one, because each one of them might take 15, 20 minutes to unpack and disassemble there. Now, Reed, did you have anything you wanted to add? I know you were the one who did the Tia interview, so, and that probably, I think that's your top viewed video, isn't it?
One of the top ones, yeah, probably the top two.
Reed especially.
Yeah.
I like Reed's approach because he doesn't even go out and he lets people come to him. He sets up a table and says, "Hey, what do you believe and why? Let's talk about it." And he lets people pick the topic.
Yeah, I just sit there with my sign. I really don't even talk to anybody. I just sit there. And also with if Tia, didn't have any good reasons for her belief, it doesn't mean her belief is false. Very well, may be true, but
yeah, you could certainly believe true things for bad reasons. And I think SE's about not so much the belief, but the mechanisms for arriving at belief. Because if, let's just say, all religion was gone tomorrow, but if you don't address why somebody is using, how somebody is arriving at knowledge, then, look at the resurgence of the flat earthers. It's not about the what, it's about the how and the why, or particularly about the how.
But even on Reed's case, I can just picture these Midwestern Christians looking at Reed's channel and saying, "Yeah, but these people are from LA." It's like, this is crazy town. And so there's always an excuse. There's always, and I think this is maybe part of the reason why Anthony Magnabosco went from university campuses to the Pathway walk to illustrate, to show that that you'll get some of the same answers no matter how old you are, whether it's a university campus or whether you're, in your 40s.
Yeah.
I like both. I like both ways of SE that Reed and Anthony uses. I like them both. I think that what people who criticize SE, and believe me, as Reed knows very well, I had a moment where I had to take a step back because I wasn't sure I totally agreed with how SE was being used, but that's me. But really what it's about is only about epistemology. It's about the journey to get to where conviction is, where they where anybody, even us, we have convictions, we believe in things, we believe things because of certain presumptions. What I think is great with SE is what it does do is it doesn't matter what you believe or what the subject is how you get to know what you think you know.
Yeah, and ideally it's like a partnership. When you're talking with someone, you're working together to find the truth, and should be open to being wrong, for sure.
Yeah. And we have to show that we're open to that too. We have to show that we're open to being SE'd also, like Doug just said. And it's
okay. Somebody keeps muting everybody. COD 3X.
I didn't mute.
Yeah,
Might have to boot him.
I was muting everybody.
Yeah, I'm ejecting COD 3X. He's coming in and just muting everybody.
Oh, is that what he was doing?
Yeah.
I don't know what you guys heard from what I said.
No, we heard most of it.
Yeah. So so I think that's what it's all about. Hence the expression street epistemology is our journey to what we think we know.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it in some ways, I welcome the criticism. And I think Doug has a point in that, our goal should never be to pick the low-hanging fruit or to, just do this just to, because it's a joint, like you said, Vincent, it's a joint journey of discovery. And one thing, I know there was a blog post recently that Anthony did about how to keep your cool when doing this, and my daughter just reached over my camera.
Sorry.
It helps me to keep in perspective. I used to believe many of these same things, and if at some point in my journey away from that, I had to come to a point where I had to choose whether I want to be honest and open, or continue in this belief now that I realize I don't have sufficient justification for it. And I see it as helping people. And I actually find it more interesting when I'm doing SE on my social media or in person. I try to inject it where I can. I find it interesting. I think Anthony made this point on the Epistemic podcast where they were talking about that one, where they're talking about the belief scale, maybe? No. I'm trying to remember where it was, whether it was the belief scale interview with Matt and Ozzy, or if it was the last episode of Epistemic, where he was talking about SE is really more interesting. It's actually easier to do if you're ignorant on the topic. So if somebody
did mention that in the discussion with Blake and Matt, and Ozzy,
yeah. So I think there was a thread recently in the private study group about somebody talking about Buddhist pantheism, and I found that was interesting to watch and watch that back and forth that somebody posted screenshots of, because I think that would be interesting to engage on, because I really don't know much about Buddhism at all. But
the I agree with that, but the disadvantage of not knowing anything is just time. Like I know very little bit about Hinduism, for example, but if I'm talking to a Hindu and I know nothing about their belief system, sure, I can ask questions to find out. But if I'm a former Hindu, I at least have the baseline covered, and we save some time, and then we can get to the meat of the reasons. So I do think there is an advantage, like for me, that I am very familiar with many different types of denominations of Christianity that I can just, in fact, they can just say a few keywords and I can guess with 90% probability where they're coming from.
And I guess maybe I should qualify what I was saying or clarify. I think it's easier to ask better. I think you can ask better questions if you have that background, because I came from a couple of different denominations of Christianity myself. But I think if you're in a topic where you're more ignorant of it, I think it's easier to stay out of counter-apologetic mode. Now, guys like you, Doug, and Reed especially, y'all are very good about staying out of that mode. I find it still difficult sometimes, especially if somebody is putting something out there like what Tia did with the what did she say? Like they found the Tower of Babel somewhere, and that's patently false. I mean, I don't know where she's getting that claim. It would have been very difficult for me to not adjust that. I think that's why Reed's so good at what he does, because he stayed on topic about the epistemology. He didn't follow that red herring.
I think there is a ziggurat that the story is based on, but it's not called the Tower of Babel, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Because I think they know where the story came from, but it's not. The Tower of Babel is not the original version of the story. That's what I've heard anyway.
And I think Tia was saying they found physical evidence of it. I don't think that's true.
Well, and what I encounter a lot is, well, they found, like my mother used this one on me when I was talking with her one time. She's like, oh, well, they found the Ark. And I'm like, which time did they find it? I mean.
Which one? Yeah, there's like 3 of them or something.
I have to tip my hat to Reed, because I often watch your videos and say, why doesn't he react to this? It's like, the person is totally wrong here, and you don't. And I think about it later and I say, that's right. This is not about what they believe, but how they get to believe it.
Vincent,
so,
but you've seen Westworld, right? You know that Reed is not human.
No, that's why I always thought. But but I do love that. I mean, but sometimes I'm saying, why don't you say anything? And Reed, you just keep on the subject, which is epistemology, and I think that's great.
Right.
I mean, I really just take Hanlon's razor to heart. I mean, never attribute to malice what can be explained by ignorance. So people as like stupid or evil, they're just mistaken or unlucky.
I learned from that.
I could have been in their shoes.
Yeah, and I respect that, and also it taught me how to deal with even my family, where I respect the fact that they are sincere. Rarely are people discuss, unless they're trolls, they don't defend what they don't believe. So they're like us, they're sincere about what they believe. The question is to try to make them think about how they believe and how they got to believe.
I do have one interesting response to Cameron's criticism. It's actually probably what Greg Kokel would say about it.
Are you talking about the one about avoiding facts, or the one about picking people
picking on people who don't know their beliefs? Greg would probably say that it's okay. Or he would make this comment to the person being questioned. He would say to them, "It's okay if you don't know the answers. You can always tell them. I'll get back to you on that." That's one of the pieces of advice that Greg gives to Christians that don't know how to respond to a particular question. He's like, "It's okay if you don't know in that moment. Get back to him later and do some homework or think on it." And Greg would not object to asking questions like that of people, even if they seem like low-hanging fruit.
Well, I have no problem with the answer, I don't know. I mean, something I tell my kids, and I try, I used to kind of get frustrated with my children and say, well, I don't know means you're not using your brain. And I realize now that was such an awful thing for me to say. So if you truly don't know, then that's the most honest answer you can give. And actually, with my interlocutors, I try to, if they say, well, I don't know, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know why I thought that or why I believe that. I try to recognize that honesty. And I try to applaud that because I say, hey, I may not know either. We're trying to discover this together. And I really try not to give people a hard time for saying I don't know. I think what we're getting at with SE is people who claim they do know, and then with a great degree of certainty, and then as you peel back the layers of the onion, oh well, maybe I'm not quite sure about that. Maybe I don't know that for sure.
What do you guys think about the criticism of SE that you're not laying your cards on the table from the get-go? So, for example, pick some idea that you guys find disgusting, that you just, let's pick homeopathy or something like that you would never want your wife or your child or whatever to spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on something that's just a complete waste of time. But here you have a guy who comes in, knocks on your door, or even just meets you on the street corner and starts asking you questions about health stuff, whatever. You don't know where they're coming from. You don't know that they're selling homeopathy. But this guy seems so nice and cordial, and he's asking you questions about certain things. But the question is, if you would have known up front that this guy's goal was to sell you homeopathy medicines, would you have even started the conversation to begin with? And if the answer is no, isn't that, now I'm just being devil's advocate here, isn't that exactly what these dirty atheists who practice SE are doing? They're not letting you know they're really selling homeopathy.
That was my issue that got me to kind of leave the group for a while. I had that issue. Reed knows about it, and Anthony knows that I had issues about the sincerity of our SE. I came to have peace with that because there's two things that can happen. One, you can feel that you've been tricked by somebody who is an atheist and tries to make you question your beliefs. But you can also ask that person if they're atheist. And Anthony, I've often heard him admit he's an atheist, or at least that he's in that category of non-belief. When asked, I think it's a very complicated question. It was one that bothered me very, very much. I sort of made peace with it, but I agree. It's a question.
I think that's a valid point, Doug. I think it's a valid criticism. Let me ask for clarification though. When you say not laying the cards out on the table, are you talking about saying where you stand on a claim, or are you talking about like your goal with the interview?
I'm saying a reasonable expectation of what the person would desire or not desire from the onset. So, a lot of my morality is based on reasonable expectations. I would not do such and such because that person would not reasonably not want that. Now, could I be wrong? Of course. But if I am speaking to let's say a 19-year-old person who comes from a very conservative Christian background, and all their life they've been told that atheists are devil worshippers and you should avoid them at all costs. If I have that reasonable expectation and I'm coming in hiding that I'm an atheist, have I done something immoral or unethical at that point? Because I have a reasonable expectation that they don't want to talk to me if they knew everything about me.
Yeah, I feel like the tactic of not letting that out right away, I can see it being counter. You have to balance it with the other objective, which is to build rapport. So if you build rapport first and then you reveal what your position is, then yeah, that would be because because being upfront with a person like that, someone who automatically judges someone as being, satanic if they're an atheist. Like that keeps you from building rapport at all if you let that out right away. At least they might take a moment to listen to you if you've built rapport first, and then you reveal that.
I think
Can
go
I
ahead.
share my way to work around that?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
This is how I do it now, because I am upfront, but I'm not upfront about being an atheist. I'm upfront about my goal. I say we both have different beliefs. I can tell you I don't believe like you, probably, but I'm not here to talk about what I believe. I'm trying to find out a way to understand how you believe, regardless of what I believe or not. So I start like that, and it works pretty well. When the person will usually think he's probably an atheist, or he's maybe a Jehovah's Witness or whatever, but at least the person knows that you put out the goal is not to defend, not to preach, not to argue or debate. You are trying to understand different people's beliefs, and by doing so, they are on the right foot. They know that they start, even if they know later they ask and you say you're an atheist, it was never your goal to preach atheism. You put up front that you actually wanted to understand what others believe, regardless of the beliefs.
I think that's a good approach. I mean, I tend to go with saying, I think it's in our best interest that we all have as much true beliefs as possible and as few false beliefs as possible. And I what was the phrase Anthony used one time? He said, I think it's best if people build as accurate a roadmap of reality as they can. As that something about informing decisions. I think I might say, I'm willing to answer any questions at the end. I think the problem, I live, in the Southeast United States, and if you lead with, if they choose the God topic and you lead with, well, I don't believe, then they almost, especially the evangelicals, they almost want to go into this, well, I gotta preach to this guy mode.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that can kind of sour the interview at that point.
Yeah, it becomes less of a discussion of why they personally are convinced to what would convince this other person, because it turns into a persuasive engagement instead.
I will say though, I think we should. I'm all for being upfront and honest about our goals with an interview, because I do sincerely want to know. I want people to understand how they form their beliefs, because so many people don't really give that much thought to it. Especially if you do a number of these interviews, and it's amazing how people are like, "Oh, I guess I never really thought about it that way." It's very clear, and I'm not saying that as a pejorative. I just, I don't think, unless you are taught the value of critical thinking and this sort of thing, I don't think it really occurs to you. It can, that could be a discussion for another time. Is this a failing of the education system, particularly the United States, or is this more of a cultural zeitgeist? Kind of the whole anti-science, anti-reason movement that's kind of popped up. I don't know. That might be a different topic for discussion. But I'm glad you brought that up, Doug, because that was one of the criticisms of SE that I forgot to mention at the beginning of the Hangout here. That I don't know why that escaped my mind.
I like what that subject, that idea. I also use the word "we" rather than "you."
Yes. Right.
I find that's very useful to say, how could we discover? Mm-hmm. If you're doing like the outsider test for faith or something, you say, well, let's suppose a Hindu comes up and they say, I believe X because Y, and you use Y to believe Z. How do we discover who was correct and who was mistaken?
Right.
That way it brings you on the same team as your interlocutor. It doesn't feel like an adversarial exchange.
Vince, have you participated on NCG, I think?
Have I what?
Do you know about NCG?
Yes, yeah, I'm often invited there, actually.
That's what I thought. Okay. So if you've participated in that, you're probably aware of this already, but
yeah.
One of the sayings that they have on NCG is they're committed to a process rather than a conclusion.
Well,
and I think that sums it up.
Yeah, I repeat that all the time. Well. You've seen that on my wall a lot. In fact,
Yeah.
I usually finish my phrases, my conversations, not debates anymore, but my conversations, I end it like that. I'm committed to a process, not a conclusion. And any conclusion I make, because I make conclusions, even convinced ones, they're open to correction upon better arguments, better information. And they're theists. And
Yeah.
I think they're the most theists I know.
Right.
But I love their mind. Dr. Jones and Bob. Bob is just a mine of wisdom. I think he's often on spot, a little bit like Ozzy. You know, where you'll always have a good explanation for something, and they're not boastful about it. They're not unopen to being corrected, but their conversation is very upbuilding to me. But they're doing a lot of SE. I haven't seen those 2 videos we talked before the show, but Matt Dillahunty has been using SE more and more and more. I don't know if it's conscious or not, but he's a great debater, but he has been using SE a lot more.
Yeah, I do see. I think he's already aware of the merits of using it. So yeah.
Well, Reed, did you want to jump in on this? Oh, go ahead. I didn't mean to talk.
No. I was just filling a blank.
Yeah, Doug, did you want to say something?
Well,
sure.
Michael,
Going back to Doug's point about what we believe when we talk with people, like I leave the topic open, so it's not always about a God. Sorry, Doug.
yeah, no, definitely, it's not always about God, but what in your experience is what 80% about theistic beliefs.
There.
And on my channel, it's probably 95%.
Yeah. And like one one theist that I think we like to run into is someone like Ocean Keltoy.
See, this was what I was going to say, Jordan. Like my strategy, like you mentioned Ocean, I really don't care that much about the non-fundamentalist theists.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Ocean, if you believe in Odin,
it's okay if they believe in God. That's fine. But just don't be dogmatic about it.
Yeah, where it becomes dangerous is when you believe that there's no chance that you could be wrong, and you have a God giving you this oomph, this power, this gravitas to say and do certain things in your life that there's no chance you could ever be wrong about. That's when you have dangerous societies and dangerous situations. And so those are the types of people that I want to talk to.
I just had that discussion with a lady online. She said, I trust in God rather than in myself. And I was open. The conversation was open enough that I could say, but you do trust in yourself to trust in God. So I said, you cannot negate the fact that you cannot trust God unless you trust your judgment is good enough to trust in that God. So
exactly, your trust in God depends on your trust in yourself.
Exactly, and she finally conceded that, and we had a good discussion. And I have almost less problems with theists than I do with atheists, in the sense that, and I hope I won't shock anybody. I know that if you follow me, you would know this. I consider myself a spiritual atheist, which is I don't believe in deism. I don't believe in the man-made gods, but I don't totally reject the concept of God, except that I see it more as nature and reality, personification of God. So I do have a little bit of a different point of view, a little bit closer to Sam Harris than, let's say, Dawkins.
I actually wish I could have your point of view on that, Vincent. Maybe I'd be a better person. I don't know, but I just feel no need for it in my life. Like and that's a question I ask theists a lot. Like, why do I even need Christianity? Why do I need Islam? Tell me, why do I need it?
It will make you better. It wouldn't make you better to be even spiritual about it. You are who you are. I have a need. I can't explain that need. That need is to be thankful. That need is, I have an urge to thank. I used to do it through prayer. Now I don't have that. But I feel a sense of otherness. I feel I'm just part of a whole
Community.
community of the universe. I think we're all connected. I can't explain that. Am I right? It could be a total product of my brain, my physical brain. I'm not saying that I'm right or wrong. I'm just saying I have an urge. I have a feeling. And because of that, I understand people who believe.
Yeah.
I do understand better what that feeling is like. I think you're seeking inspiration, and I don't know if I told you guys about this yet, or if I posted about it on Facebook at all. But earlier this year, I had kind of a spiritual experience that was kind of new for me, but it was kind of synthetic. I brought it about myself because, well, there's kind of some context leading up to it, but basically what I was doing was I was imagining what I think the best kind of God would be, or what kind of God would I fall in love with if he were real and he interacted with us. And as I was doing that, what I tried to do was imagine how I would feel if I did meet that kind of God, and it managed to well up some powerful emotions in me, and it left a lasting impression. And I feel like that's kind of what I imagine that's what a lot of people's experiences of God are like, is that they are looking for inspiration, and somebody inspires them or stimulates these emotions in some similar way. And even though it's synthetic, it feels real to them, and it gives them a sense of purpose. It gives them something to live for.
It's not a coincidence that the whole world, intercultural people, believe in a God. It doesn't mean that the God exists. It means that the need to believe in something superior, it does exist. Now, that doesn't mean it's true. It simply means that we have to understand that people all over the world with different gods, different beliefs, no gods, whatever, do have this common urge to believe that they're part of something bigger, that they're not solipsistic in their belief, that that need for thinking, that is I can't explain it. When something good happens to me, and even when I have a shitty life, but there's one thing that's good in my life, I have that urge to thank. Is it upbringing? Maybe. Maybe it's just my upbringing that as a Christian, maybe. But the fact is that I'm not the only one who has that urge. And I know a lot of atheists who have that urge and refuse to address it. And like Doug, if he doesn't have that urge, that's fine, Doug. I mean, it doesn't change who you are. I'm just saying that to understand others, one must understand that that urge exists, that those feelings exist.
See, this is my moral dilemma. I get emails almost on a daily basis from believers who say, "Thank you, Doug, for what you do. I'm starting to have doubts, blah, blah, blah." And if you read the comment section of any of my videos, there are hurting, struggling people out there with sucky lives. They need this God belief. They really do. And if I'm raising doubt in them, I could potentially hurt them. Do I want to do this? No, I don't want to hurt people. Now, maybe it's one of those situations where in the short run it might be painful, but in the long run they might be better. I don't know. I can't see the future. But this is the struggle I go through, because I literally read some of the comments of people who are not just the ones telling me I'm going to go to hell and someday my knee will bend, and not those people, the people who really struggle with their life, and this gives them comfort. And I'm bringing out maybe things that they always thought were true, and maybe now they're doubting those things. It's like, whoa, many people come to my mind, even that I know personally in my family and so forth, like my own wife, she needs that tight community in her church, in her groups, survive, to just live every day. Do I want to take that away from her? Of course not.
It's very interesting you say the word need. I don't feel the need. The need to thanks, yes, but the need for a God, I don't need. But there is that feeling of otherness that is unwelcomed. It's not, it's not something it's not synthetic. It's not welcome. It's something I fight even sometimes. But I think that, like you say, a lot of people do need it. And that's one of the reasons I don't fight my mother shunning me now since yesterday, because she's 82. What am I going to do if I finally make her realize that she was in the wrong all her life? Is that my goal? No.
I think after my spiritual experience, I realized, even though I didn't descend into total nihilism when I became an atheist, like I understood you could still live for a greater cause. Like I hadn't personally identified with a greater cause yet, and it kind of occurred to me to think more about what that is for me personally. And so if we're going through a process of deconverting somebody, or like if they are asking us questions and they're doubting their faith and they want to know what we think, offering them an alternative perspective to replace the one that they have is better than leaving them with nothing at all, because that can be really unsettling. So that's what I like to kind of prepare for, is if they ask, if I don't have this particular belief, what am I going to believe instead? And I'm like, okay, there's some other options here, and I might try to make some suggestions. And so my interpretation of the Bible, and I think it could probably apply for a lot of other religious texts and stuff as well, is that, like I said earlier, it's like we're looking for inspiration, and we're looking for a cause greater than ourselves, except not everybody is doing that. But a lot of people get to that point in their lives when they do look for that. But like for me personally, I was living rather comfortably, and I wasn't actively looking for that kind of inspiration at first. But I got to a point where that need developed in me, and I started identifying as a philosopher because I'm a lover of wisdom. And why do I love wisdom? Because I think I see it as that cause greater than ourselves. It's something that it's something that we can live for. It's something we can, how do I say this? The way I've said it, I think, is that the collective learning of humanity altogether is a group effort, and each of us has a role in that. And so that's vaguely what I see as the cause greater than myself. It's a cause that any of us can even get behind. It's a cause that we can each personally, what's the word? Internalize. Mm-hmm. And that can give us a sense of purpose, whether there's a God or not. And yeah, that's what I want to try to do, is not just challenge people to think about their beliefs, but give them an alternative perspective to consider if they start doubting.
But Doug was saying that he wonders about the effects of his street epistemology. But the truth is, nobody convinces anybody else of changing their opinion. The fact that we try to make people question can go both ways. It can make them confirm their beliefs and their God, or it could make them question the validity of their epistemology, hence their beliefs. So it's the fault of no one to trigger critical thinking. I think, you know.
Yeah, and I've been told I've made a lot of Christians stronger. So there's that.
There you go. There you go.
Well, I think one point Anthony often says is, you know, I want to see if people have a good reason for their belief. And if they don't, and they go back and do some research and they find out they do have good reasons for the belief, he and I can't speak for Anthony, but it seems like he generally would like to know.
Yeah.
Because if it turns out it is true, whether it's does Doug own a nuclear missile or does a God exist or whatever, you know, I certainly want to know if Doug has a nuke so I can maybe move to an uncharted island out of range of his nuke.
Yeah, that would be useful.
But in all seriousness, I mean, I think this is a good topic. I know we started discussing criticisms with SE, but we could certainly transition to this topic and keep going on this. You know, the ethics of practicing SE, and are there times where is it ethical to is it the more ethical thing to discontinue an SE exchange? Mm-hmm. That can definitely get in some thorny territory, and it's something you have to think about and consider, especially if you want to, if your morality is you wish to not do harm. Mm-hmm. I think I don't think he joined the live Hangout, but Dr. Wells in the YouTube chat was talking about. He posted an exchange on the SE group about dealing with an interlocutor who said that if he didn't have the God belief, he would discard, or he would relapse into alcoholism. That's it. Yeah. And so that I mean, do you continue there? And I offered maybe ask if they would be willing, if they could be shown there was a secular method for staying sober, and if you were shown a way to control your alcoholism without a God belief, would you be open to that? But there's some interlocutors who I've heard, and I've never encountered one. There's some I've heard about who say they would kill themselves if they found out that their belief was wrong about God. And I mean, I'm not the best at reading people, so I mean, maybe they're just saying that because they've heard somebody else say that life wouldn't be worth living, and they're just parroting what they say. But I mean, I like to try to err on the side of caution there. And if somebody is truly thinking that, then do you continue? I know Reed had to drop because he was having connection issues, but Doug, do you run into anybody like that?
Yeah, I bail most times. Because it's just not worth taking the risk. Like I always say that people come into a God belief one of two ways, mostly indoctrination or desperation. And so whenever I'm talking to someone who tells me, yeah, I became a believer in Jesus at the age of 37, first thought comes in my head, good chance this guy went through a divorce, addiction, death, tragedy, some type of deep psychological need. I got to tread carefully. And so, yeah, I err on the side of caution. I've been told by friends, very close friends, yeah, if I didn't have my God belief, I'd kill myself. Why should I live? Boom, I'm out of there. Like, change the topic as quickly as I can. I've had people tell me, why should I even get up in the morning if there's no God? Like, seriously, why should I go to work? What's the use? I'll just play Xbox all day, even though I have a wife and kids to support. Like, if he's being honest, I don't want that to happen. Like, I just gotta change the subject and move on. Like, and what scares me the most, I think some of these guys are telling me the truth.
They probably are. They probably are. I bail out all the time. If a guy tells me we're discussing and he says, without God, I would still be an alcoholic today. That's it. I'm done. I'm not going to try to persuade him or try to get him to question God again and go back to alcoholism. I think there is a point where, yeah. Excuse me.
No, go ahead. I didn't realize.
No, please. That was the point anyway.
I think that's a good point there. And, Anthony's got a great, and I'm not trying to make this the praise Anthony, praise Doug, praise Reed channel or anything like that, or the Hangout or anything like that. But I'm just citing them as an example. I think Anthony's got a couple videos about when to bail. So if anybody's new to SE, that's always worth a watch. I think there was one video where he's like, if somebody has like an obvious substance issue or mental health issue, like he found out one guy had a TBI, a traumatic brain injury, and so he kind of bailed on the exchange.
I saw that video. Yeah, he had that on a playlist.
I think I made the comment of, especially with like the substance abuse or somebody who has like a mental, serious mental illness or impairment. I think that's where if you're truly ethical about your SE, I'm not trying to go into the no true Scotsman fallacy there, but I think where SE is, this goes back to, I'm kind of trying to bring it back to that original topic, where we differ from somebody like Ray Comfort is somebody who's really serious about SE and serious about helping people would hopefully consider that and decide to discontinue the exchange. Whereas all too often somebody who's trying to proselytize, this goes back also to, this kind of tails into the criticism of SE is just about creating non-believers. I think also, if that's what we were all about, we would continue with that. We wouldn't even have any discussion.
If we were proselytizing, we'd take advantage of them in a desperate situation.
And how many people proselytizing for whatever cause would take advantage of somebody who may not be in, the best, I'm trying to think the best way to say this, may not have full control of the mental faculties.
Let's say it like this. When we see somebody that has a crutch, we don't kick the crutch out of their hands, right? Religion can be a crutch. Belief can be a crutch. For heaven's sake, let's leave them with their crutch if that's all they have. What do we win in taking the crutch away? We're not trying to take the crutch away from people who need it. We're trying to, people who don't have the crutch, try to help them know that they don't need that crutch because they don't need it. But we have to be very careful, psychologically.
Yeah, I think also you have to. I'm sorry, were you about to say something, Doug?
Well, I was just gonna say, how far do you take that? Like, if someone desperately needs that crutch, do you actually give them another crutch? Like, do you, if a little bit of crutch helps them, wouldn't more crutches help them even more? Like, at what point? Like, I say this sometimes facetiously to people, but there are certain people I have met online that I'm convinced if they left the God belief, they would be horrible, rotten, dangerous to themselves or society. So I've actually encouraged them to become better Christians. I encourage them to have their quiet time and read their Bible and fellowship with believers, because I don't want them to be a danger to themselves or others. Now, but is that okay of me to do? Am I being disingenuous there, or I don't know. These are some of the things I think about.
Same here.
We have Kim here. I don't know if Kim wants to be introduced or not.
Yeah, I said hi to Kim in the chat.
I wanted to say that you guys need to accept reality. How you guys going to face life if you guys are changing reality?
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by we need to accept reality?
You guys are wrong, and there is a God, and he's going to throw stones at us and kill us at Armageddon. I mean, how you guys going to feel about that?
That's going to hurt.
Yeah.
Well, if that's certainly true, I'd like to know that. Why do you think that's true?
Why do you think it's not true?
I'm not saying I think it's not true. I'm just asking why you think it's true.
So you're telling me that there's no God, and you believe your God is evolution?
No, I'm not claiming that. I'm just not convinced that there is one.
And what if you're wrong?
If I'm wrong, I'd certainly like to know.
You're going to apologize to all these people you're misleading? All these children you're lying to?
Lying kind of assumes that we're being dishonest, though. But is that what you think we're doing? We're being dishonest? We're lying?
Oh, yeah. You guys being dishonest with your fellow man. What about if there's somebody out there searching for the truth?
Well, I'd like to think I'm searching for the truth.
Yeah, we'd like to think that's what we're doing.
What you're questioning is our sincerity. You're not questioning our beliefs. You're not, right now what you're doing is trying to explain to us how we are wrong. But you're trying
I know all about you. I'm a fellow XJW also. I know all about your kind.
Yeah, so?
Let's hang on.
Conversation.
Hang on, let's try and keep this one-on-one, because I know last time we had somebody who
Sure.
was a theist on here, it kind of evolved into like a multi, many to one conversation. So I can continue the conversation with Kim, or if one of you guys would like to, that's fine.
Yeah,
I just don't want us all jumping in and kind of.
Vince, let's have you go ahead.
Me? I was just my question. I feel pardon me, Kim, if I'm wrong. I feel you are trolling, to be honest with you. But what I'm trying to say is that you are not discussing why we are wrong, or you're not giving us something to really discuss about. You are just telling us we're going to be stoned at Armageddon. Now, you know, that's not what do you call it? It's not an argument. It's just a statement. What I would like from you is to explain to us why you believe we are wrong, and especially why you would think that we are insincere.
You seriously think Jesus the baby killer is going to give you evidence, a sign from the sky, or what?
I'm asking what you think.
Think about what?
What are you saying is true for you? What do you believe in?
I believe Jesus is the clone of the baby killer Jehovah.
So you don't like Jesus? Is that what I understand?
Correct.
Okay, well, so what is your positive belief in going forward?
Accepting reality no matter how much it sucks.
Okay, well, I think we're all there, right? If we sincerely try to understand life around us, we accept.
No, you're not. You're sinning against the Holy Spirit. You're denying your maker.
But you don't believe in the maker. You don't like the maker.
I do believe in the maker. Why would I be talking about him if I'm a maltheist? I believe God is evil. I'm a misotheist. I have hatred towards Jehovah.
Oh, okay, I see. What you're saying is that Jehovah is a bad God, right?
Very bad.
Okay. It's the first time I hear that, so it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say to you. You know, it's not like I'm a fan of Jehovah either.
Hey, just to interrupt right quick, I'm going to go ahead and just set this, set like kind of a time, because I know kind of doing SE on the fly like this, or having a one-on-one discussion can go long. So how does another like 8 or 10 minutes sound?
Can I ask Kim some questions?
Yeah, if Vincent wants to take turns with you, yeah, that's fine.
Oh yeah, no,
I just don't want it to be a free for all.
I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah. No, I've never talked to Kim. I've never talked to someone who believes in God but believes in an evil God. This is my first time, so it's very interesting to me. So you are very, very sure that this evil God exists?
Oh yeah, that's my belief.
How long have you had this belief that the evil God exists? How many years?
Well, I used to be a Jehovah's Witness.
How many years ago?
I disassociated 3 years ago.
3 years ago?
4 years ago.
So in your belief system, you believe an evil God exists. I'm just very curious, like, how do you explain all the good in the world?
Well, God is half good.
Oh, so it's not an evil God, it's a half evil, half good God?
Yes.
Okay.
I kind of relate.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too, because I'm an atheist, Kim, but I would think the hypothesis of maybe even two gods, one being evil, one being good, explains the world we see, rather than like an all good God or an all bad God. So yeah, I can appreciate that worldview. But can I ask you, like, why do you believe this God exists, whether it's evil or good in the first place?
Well, I can't find any other explanation.
You know, I kind of relate to what you're saying, and I'll tell you why. Because when I left, because I didn't leave the Jehovah's Witness, the Watchtower, because of the Watchtower. I left because as I was studying for a sermon, I became an atheist. But I didn't quite become an atheist. I was just mad at God. I remember going out here in Arizona in the desert and yelling, blasphemous, saying bad words and everything to God, because I was so angry at him, because I thought he was the monster. And I still think the character of the biblical God is a monster. I do believe that. But I don't believe that he exists anymore. But I do relate to what you're saying, because I understand it, that feeling that the God exists, but that he's a perfect, horrible person, which actually sometimes does good. But I have to admit, the good is not overpowering the bad in this world. So I get that. You could talk, Doug. I just
Yeah, Kim, I just want to, like, you mentioned, like, you believe in this God because he explains something for you. What exactly does he explain? Like, the reason why there's anything at all? Is that what you're talking about?
Well,
You mentioned, like, you believe in this God because...
yeah. Well, you have to pick a choice. Which God do you believe in? And that's the one I believe in, the God of Abraham. But I also respect him because I don't believe in hellfire. I believe in annihilation. So he's gonna put me out of my misery.
But why do you believe in any God at all? Like, how did you eliminate the no God hypothesis from the list?
No, I hear you. This is all insanity. But you know, like we create things, we model stuff, and I just believe that my fingers and my brain were all by design. So I believe in a God.
Could you imagine this world as it is? Would it not be reasonable, maybe, to think that this world is exactly how it would be without a God?
You know, I wish there wasn't a God, but I'm not gonna lie to myself.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm not trying to change your opinion. Just trying to understand.
Well, I wish you all the best, Kim.
Yeah. Me too.
No, I hear you guys. I hear you guys are trying to do good in the world, and the atheist community is a movement, and you guys are trying to bring good to the world, and you know, you guys are better than what I'm bringing to the world, and better than the Satanist.
Well, I don't know
I'll
what
try.
you're bringing to the world, Kim. You might be a way better guy than me. I don't know.
Yeah. Me too. But especially Doug, yes.
Yeah, I think the attitude we would have is that I personally think that if the world itself is not going to implement some kind of fairness naturally, then the responsibility is on us to try to make it as fair as we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's an interesting perspective, one that I haven't really heard before, but that I kind of get. So that's all I can say. Good luck to you. You know.
Yeah, I actually love that perspective, Kim, of the evil God concept. I think it's really fascinating because you could believe in an evil God and still use the Bible to justify it. Like, why is there good in the world if there's an evil God? Well, but this evil God really wanted to have free will, moral evil. So therefore, he gave Adam and Eve a choice in the garden to choose good. And so you could just flip everything on its head and use the Bible to explain this evil God. It's quite fascinating to me.
Biblically, it makes total sense, to be honest with you. Biblically.
Have you guys ever heard of Dan Barker, the author?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a secret misotheist, and just in my opinion.
Oh, well. I don't know about that. I can't judge, but it's an interesting perspective, and for sure, the Bible, the character of Jehovah in the Bible, is definitely not one of a kind God.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I've always said that how can you hate something you don't believe it even exists? So if you're a true atheist who doesn't believe a God exists, how can you hate that entity? But I guess a friend of mine pointed out, well, but if Yahweh did exist, the character portrayed in the Old Testament, would you like him? No, of course not. But I don't believe that character exists in real life. So it'd be like watching a movie of a really bad antagonist. You don't like him at that moment, but once you leave the movie theater, you just forget about him.
I have another argument for that. I say to myself, okay, why do the atheists fight so much against the God they don't believe in? And the reason is this. If people were followers of Darth Vader or Voldemort, right? And they believed it was true. It doesn't mean I believe that Voldemort or Darth Vader is true, but the actions of his followers, those who believe those characters are true, I would fight against. And in that sense, I would be trying to prove that Voldemort and Darth Vader are just fiction.
Yeah, even if the gods are not real, their followers are.
Exactly.
That's the issue.
That's the point.
But Kim, what makes you think that that there's design in this universe?
No, I just believe that we designed, so I'm thinking like somebody designed me.
And so how did you kind of figure out, oh, the millions and millions of years of laborious, slow process of evolution, and that's how we came about? Do you believe that, or how did you remove that from the list of options?
No, I think evolution is a false teaching.
Okay.
Yeah, I would assume you would. The fact is that you believe that we are designed. I don't have a problem with the word design, because I do think that a lot of things are designed, except that I don't always need to think it's someone, but something. Like I do believe that evolution has designed a lot of things. Even Richard Dawkins is not shy of the word design. He just tries to put it in a certain context. So I'm not against the word design, but I don't believe that we are designed by someone. I do believe that something has made us the way we are, and I believe that's evolution. But that's me. I'm not saying you have to believe the same thing. You know?
So Kim, in 5 years from now, Kim, if you became convinced, hypothetically, that evolution was via common descent was actually true, would you still believe in the evil good God?
I would just think that he used evolution to create us.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a logical answer.
When I hear that, that tells me, well, evolution is not the real issue. Then it's something else. What is that something else?
This is all insanity. We all belong in the loony bin.
Can I ask you a question, Kim? Do you find an advantage to yourself in what you believe? You know, like some people believe in God and it gives them bliss. You know, some people believe in reason and don't believe in God, but it also gives them bliss. I used to joke that I was touched by the grace of reason. So, you know, we all have different kinds of ways. What advantage does your belief bring to you?
Nothing. It's eating me up inside.
I can understand. Okay. Well, that's at least consistent, I guess, with what you believe, I guess. Okay. I don't really have any other question. I think it's a very interesting point of view. And I don't dismiss it.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Kim. Do you mind if we move on?
Yeah, I'm going to leave because a bunch of haters on the chat, so I'm going to leave.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Well, I do apologize. I mean, I'm trying to moderate the video and the video chat and then the YouTube chat. So I apologize if there's you're being mistreated there.
Ignore the haters. You know, I see that there's Let's here on with us.
Yeah, let's chat. Or were you Dr. Wells in the YouTube chat that I've got in the side window? I don't see that he's muted.
No, he's not muted. Can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
I just see Let's.
Yeah, that's me, but I don't know if there's an audio delay.
No, we can hear you. We can hear you.
It's good.
There might be a delay on the stream. It's
Might be muted. Sorry. Yeah, I can hear you guys.
Okay,
Awesome.
great.
So
Hi.
you're the one who had the alcoholic interlocutor that you were bringing up? Is that correct?
Okay. So, yeah, I had an alcoholic interlocutor a while back, and I was wondering how far I could actually go in that conversation. I guess if I had one quick question before we close, it would be, how do you guys manage having a normal discussion and then asking if you can record the discussion or like have an opportunity to like physically record the dialogue and then go back into a regular conversation? That's one of the things that I'm having trouble going through, because I noticed that there's a lot of paranoia that ends up happening as soon as you're like, hey, and can I record that? That's it.
That'd probably be a good question for. I know Reed had to drop, but he's in the YouTube chat. But I haven't started recording my chats yet, so probably Doug might have some insight on that.
Well, for me, it's not an issue because they come in knowing it's recorded. So, because I do all just live streams. But it sounds like there's no problem for Anthony. You just ask right from the get-go, is it okay if I record this? Well, I think most people say, yeah. Most people like having, well, I don't know. I'd be curious to know for Anthony and Reed, what percentage of people say, no, I don't want to be recorded at all? Maybe Reed can type it in the chat somewhere.
I've recorded a couple conversations with some people where I would set my phone up with some sound recording app, and I would just set it. I set it on the table, and we just kind of forget it's there as we start talking, because I make eye contact with them, and just keep my focus on them and keep their focus on me, and it allows them not to be distracted as much, I guess, by the fact that it's being recorded. By the way, are you watching the YouTube stream? Because that would probably account for the delay.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, thanks for answering the question. I appreciate it.
I think one thing I would add, though, is you have to be wary of what's it called? Like
yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to set
laws.
this up properly. It's my first time, but I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Oh,
okay.
Let's see.
Yeah, no problem. I was having technical issues with the Hangout earlier. But if you're going to be recording, I think he dropped from the Hangout.
Okay, he's probably still watching the stream then.
Yeah, I think one thing I would add, though, is if you're, and this is just kind of like a standard, I am not a lawyer, but et cetera, you may want, if you do plan to record these interventions.
Oh, you want to have consent, of course.
Yeah, be familiar with the laws in your area. At least, I know we had some people in the group from, I think most of us are in the United States, and in the United States, most of us in the live chat or in the Hangout are in the U.S. I know it can vary state to state, and sometimes it can vary within a state on like county or city jurisdictions. So just be aware of the consent to recording laws in your area, whether you're U.S. or otherwise. You just don't want anybody getting in trouble for. I know that some states you have to get consent from both parties for recording. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes you only need one party consent. I think with what Doug does, it might be a little different, because there's if he's starting like a Skype chat. I know Doug, you do yours a lot on video chat. I think if somebody joins a video chat with you, there's an implied consent.
Yeah, even here on Google Hangouts, you have to click a little button that says, basically, whatever I say can go out in the ether, and anybody can use it for anything they want,
Right.
And take me out of context and stuff. But, that's just the risk we take. But I was going to say to Dr. Wells, like, if you're wearing a big camera on your neck and you're doing these interviews, the question of, can I record you, is almost like nobody's going to approach you unless they're comfortable with being recorded if you've got this huge camera around your neck.
Yeah, I think it's more of like a CYA thing to, get their consent recorded, so they can't come back and it's their word against yours.
But if they're recorded saying I'm okay with it, yeah.
Well, yeah, I see your point, and I think also that's why a lot of times they, Reed and Anthony do it in like public spaces. Because I think the federal law is, if it's the U.S. federal law is that there's no what's the phrase they use, expectation of privacy.
Yeah.
I've got something interesting I kind of want to discuss with you guys if we have enough time.
I'm willing to since we got the stream off to a late start, I'm willing to go maybe another half hour. I know we said we were going to 3 Eastern, but I was having some technical difficulties at the beginning. I had to reboot my computer.
Yeah,
so I'm willing to go. I do have to hop on laundry at some point. I'm getting the stink eye from my family that I haven't done that yet.
Okay.
But I'm just kidding. So I can go for a little longer if it's okay with anybody else. I know I'm kind of running it, and I apologize. It's my first time actually running a live Hangout like this. So what'd you have to bring up there, Jordan?
I imagine Vince and Doug will have something, have a perspective on this, but metaphysics. I was watching the SE encounter that Ocean had with one of our other SE members, and in the hangout that they had after that SE conversation, Ocean mentioned, I think, that his gods are metaphysical entities, and so it doesn't make sense to expect physical evidence of them. In fact, I think he even went on to say it would be evidence against them if physical evidence were presented, I guess. Like it would be evidence against the way he understands them to be, I guess. So, and I get kind of a sense from some or many theists that their gods are meant to be metaphysical, but at the same time, they think that the metaphysical has physical consequences. It has the ability to affect the physical world. And what that usually means is that they think that the metaphysical is prior to the physical. They think Platonic forms are real, for example. And I wanted to know what you guys think of that, I guess.
You want to go, Doug, first?
My first initial thought is, why should I care about it?
Yeah.
Well, I guess for anybody watching, I mean, I always like to clarify terms. So what do you mean by what do they mean by metaphysical? Do they give you a definition?
Well, okay, I've got the Wikipedia page up here. Not for metaphysics exactly.
I mean, is this similar to like saying, well, the supernatural is real, but we can't investigate it, so therefore you can't prove it's not wrong?
They might label it as the supernatural, but it's kind of like the realm of ideas, really. It's the realm of.
It's a little bit self-contradictory, because what they're saying is that we cannot prove physically what is supernatural, but they point to ourselves as being creations of that supernatural, which is a physical proof. So it's a total. They're absolutely confused as to their premise. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say is that, I always say, is that you cannot prove the supernatural simply because we do not have the supernatural tools. We only have empirical tools and 5 senses to understand them. So the fact that we don't have the tools doesn't mean the supernatural doesn't exist, but it simply matters we have no way of confirming that it exists. In other words, we don't know it exists and nobody else does.
I think what I might expect someone to say if they believe in the Platonic forms is that the access we have to it is through our reasoning, and as a result of that, it's kind of like how we discover mathematical truths through proofs. Like that is kind of the way we have our reasoning is our mathematical reasoning is our epistemology when it comes to metaphysical things. So what's interesting about that, though, is something that I've been looking into lately that casts doubt on the idea of having certainty even with things like math. And that's Gödel's incompleteness theorems, which says that no formal system is both complete and consistent. And what that means, to me, I'm seeing a parallel to the problems we have with physical epistemology, and that you cannot approach metaphysics without a perspective. You have to work at it from a perspective, just like you need to work off of a perspective when you're doing physical investigation. Metaphysical investigation requires a perspective as well. It's the axioms that you're working with, and there is no set of axioms that is both complete and consistent.
Wouldn't metaphysics, though, be solely perceived emotionally?
Oh, well, I guess I was thinking along the lines of like mathematics is what I was thinking in terms of metaphysical, but what are you seeing as the emotional side of that, I guess?
Well, just to it's good to define what we think it means. When I think metaphysical, I do think supernatural. I do think unnatural, and it's because unnatural, really, when you think about it, is a synonym to supernatural. It's something that is not natural, and so it can be only perceived through logic that I think can only have its roots in emotional or mathematics. It's a little different. I don't know why I can't put the link between metaphysics and maths, really. I must have a misunderstanding somewhere. But I do think that what is metaphysical...
That might be me, actually. I'm not sure.
I don't know. It kind of confuses me right now, because mathematics for me is probably the most down-to-earth system we can rely on. But what is metaphysical is often perceived emotionally. That's what
okay.
I could be wrong.
The label I would put on it, if you're talking about emotions, is spiritual, I guess.
Yes, and I am spiritual. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's about what drives you. Yeah.
Right. Like I said earlier, I believe in otherness. I feel an otherness. I feel the need to be thankful. There's something more than myself, and I call myself. It makes some people laugh and some people understand it. I call myself a spiritual atheist because I have not abandoned my spirituality. I have simply abandoned the idea of a theistic God.
So, Jordan, Ocean's basically saying, I have this belief and it's not falsifiable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's made that pretty clear, yeah.
I would just say at that point, well, I can, you can believe in anything based on that. So I guess we're done here.
Yeah.
I think I would add something here that if, I wasn't part of the original discussion, so if I'm misunderstanding, please correct me if I'm wrong. But to borrow kind of a phrase that Aaron Ron and Matt Dillahunty sometimes use, if there was a God if there was some being that was undetectable and purely metaphysical, at some point, if it interacts with reality, its arm, I think, what was it, Aaron Ross says, its arm would be dripping with physics.
Mm-hmm.
There would be some, if it doesn't manifest in reality or interact with reality, because we're confined to reality.
I think actually Neil deGrasse Tyson said that.
Yeah. Well, whoever. So if we're confined to reality, and this kind of touches on the problem of hard solipsism as well. If we're confined to reality, to the natural, and this metaphysical essence, or whatever you want to call it, doesn't manifest in reality in any detectable form, or interact with it in any detectable form, at that point, to me, I kind of go with what Doug said. It's indistinguishable from a being that does not exist. And this is kind of like this is kind of why I take issue with deism in particular, because it's like, well, okay, why should I care if this being was just a prime mover and doesn't interact and is just started the wheels on the thermodynamics of the universe and then went off to universe 2.0 to start it again. Well, why should we care?
Yeah, actually, the thing is too is why would we? It's always the question as what does the world look like? Does it look like there is a God, a deistic mover, or does it look like what chaotic world it would look like if there wasn't any God? And the truth is, even our own planet is barely livable. I mean, there's how much percentage of this planet is habitable?
Just a small, wafer-thin layer of the crust.
Yeah, and then we have earthquakes, we have natural catastrophes. Come on, the world and even our planet looks exactly like it would without a prime mover that has love as main quality.
Well, and I would go one further. I would say, okay, so you think that there was some metaphysical thing that had to start the universe. How many universes do we have that we can observe to compare it to? How do we recognize design? And that's kind of where you go back to the SE of it. Mm-hmm. Do we recognize design by complexity, or do we recognize design by contrasting it with that which is not designed? And I'm totally ripping off Matt Dillahunty here because he does he has a great video on the watchmaker argument and the argument for design.
Very good.
And if you say everything is designed, if you're just asserting that, then you have nothing with which that is undesigned to contrast that to. You're literally saying every snowflake, every hurricane, every tornado is designed. How many universes can we observe? one. As far as we know, we can only observe one universe. Now, I'm open to the possibility that there are more, but I don't know. It's kind of like people say, well, if you believe in aliens or something, I'm like, well, I don't necessarily believe in aliens. I haven't seen any evidence of extraterrestrial life. I admit it's a possible, given the vastness of the universe and how many exoplanets we found, and some of them seem to have Earth-like conditions. But that saying that something is possible is different from asserting something to be the best explanation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But you see these deep questions, like when I'm raising doubt in a believer, let's say about specific theism, you can almost see what's happening inside their head. It's like all these thoughts come flooding in, but there has to be a God. There has to be, because something can't come from nothing. And how can we have objective morals? And all these thoughts just come flooding in. And it's like, okay, this maybe can be doubted, but this can. And when you put it all together, oh no, I'm okay. I'm good to go with this belief. And you kind of see this psychological process happening I'm not just saying of others, like in myself as well. It's like it's human nature to do that.
Yeah, I think when, in my journey away from it, I mean, I'm not here to just tell my story, but I think, and somebody else I may have had exchanges with me, I've already heard this, but I think one of the biggest, I mean, it wasn't like a single moment where I was like, oh, I might be wrong. But if I could, the closest I would come to that would be I was watching the debate between Bill Nye and Ken Ham about creation versus evolution. And at that point, I was a staunch young Earth creationist. I was really getting deep into apologetics because I was thinking, these atheists, they just hadn't been, they just hadn't been presented the right argument or the right evidence. And oddly enough, it was as I was watching that, there was a viewer submitted question where somebody said, what would it take to change your mind? And that's such a powerful question.
Yeah.
And it just hit me when Ken Ham was like, well, nothing would change my mind because it's a cell phone, but I got this big. And ain't nothing can convince me it's not true. Well, okay. At that point, why are we having this discussion? If nothing will change your mind, then...
Wait a minute, Tim, you were a believer? You were a believer when this debate was going on?
I was. And
Wow.
that question made me realize, well, wow, I really am closed-minded. And I really hadn't considered the other side. And I didn't drop my belief then. But what I did was I started going to places. I started looking at the other side and saying, okay, if what I believe is true, then it's going to be true no matter what the other side says. But let's see what their arguments are, and let's see how I can counter them. And I'd go to places like the Talk Origins, the Index of Creationist Claims. And I started realizing, wow, all the stuff I was told, I just accepted because these authority figures are telling me, or some apologist was telling me, and it's not true. The evidence isn't on my side. And at that point, there was an inflection point. And I had to say, am I going to be honest with myself? Am I going to be intellectually honest and quit doing these mental gymnastics trying to justify all this? Or am I going to say, hey, I was mistaken? And I'm not trying to just quote Matt Dillahunty here the whole time, but he says the great thing about being wrong is you're not wrong anymore. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I'm so drawn to SE, because it helps people discover whether they are mistaken. And I have to always tell myself I'm open to being wrong as well. If somebody has good evidence for their belief, whether it's that GMOs are bad or vaccines cause autism or whatever, I may be strongly against that. But if they have compelling evidence, and if the evidence is indeed on their side, I want to know that things that are true and discard beliefs that are false, or at least discard beliefs I can't, that are not warranted.
Mm-hmm. As you were telling that, while you were telling that story, I was just picturing the soft music playing in the background, crescendoing at the end.
And it proves that debate did have some effect. And some people say debates will never have an effect on people. They do.
What's interesting was the question in the debate. It wasn't so much the evidence, but it was that question led me to go reconsider the evidence for evolution. And at that point, I didn't immediately discard my God belief. I think I started with, well, okay, I'm no longer a young Earth creationist. And then as I started diving into some of these SE videos. I started diving into Matt Dillahunty's videos and watching these atheist debates. And I started realizing as an observer, I can no longer justify these things. And I dove deeper into the Bible and realized, I can't justify this. How can I? I mean, I'm not
Tim,
trying to go into counter
this is great.
apologetics mode.
This is great because like guys like Reed, he gives me a tough time. Like, Doug, why do you even bother with all these pastors and apologists? They're not going to give you open, honest, reflective answers. They're bringing in their followers from church and they're watching you, and this is like an us versus them scenario, and it's a no-win situation. But there are Christians watching this.
Yeah, you just froze.
Yeah, Doug, you're Skyping out there.
Yep, he's totally frozen.
Maybe his nuke went off.
Okay. Well, at least it's not just me then. Okay.
He's frozen.
Yeah, I think Doug's right there. Debate does have its value, but you have to get to the point of doxastic openness first, I believe. Now, I could be wrong on that. I always put that qualifier out there. I could be mistaken.
Yeah.
That's the only good position.
I'd watched before I discovered I was doxastically closed. I still watched debates before that, but I was always like, there's got to be something I can find out to prove that the atheist is wrong, or that the person I'm against, the person on the other side of the argument is wrong. There's got to be just some magic bullet argument or some little nugget that we just hadn't found yet to make all this make sense. But when I found out, or when that question helped me realize I was closing myself off to evidence that didn't agree with my preconceived ideology, that was the turning point for me, I believe. Yeah, and that's why, and I think that's ultimately the point of SE is it helps people discover. You can help people discover their doxastic closure. Mm-hmm. That's why things like the outsider test for faith are so powerful. Because if you can take, if you watch the last community hangout where Darth Dawkins kind of trolled and took over the last community hangout, I think it was Paul who was on there who was saying, well, because Darth Dawkins is a presuppositional apologist, and he was saying, well, it was revealed to me by special revelation that God is real, and I can't make sense of the universe without God, so therefore, God is real. And Paul's like, well, okay, Vishnu just revealed himself to me, or herself. I don't know. Is Vishnu a male or female God? I don't know.
Herself.
So Vishnu just revealed herself to me, and Vishnu's telling me that you're mistaken. If you can use the same argument and plug in a different God, then it's not a very powerful argument.
That is always my argument. I love what you just said, because I always say to people, you have to use the same standard or argumentative construction for others. Like, for example, when people say, look at nature, doesn't that prove God? I say, look at thunder and lightning, doesn't that prove Thor? The argument is, the construction is false. It's interchangeable. Anybody who has an interchangeable argument has a bad argument.
Well, I can put on my apologist hat and I can say, well, see, Vincent, the thunderstorms and the cancer and the plagues, those are just all because of sin. And if we didn't sin, our world would be perfect.
Which I would answer, yes, that's your point of view as a Christian. My point of view as a Viking is that Thor exists, and Thor and thunder and lightning is like you say, it's for his to show his power, but it's Thor, not Jehovah or God or Yahweh. So it's a bottomless discussion. The point is that, like you said before, when an argument is constructed in a way it could be interchangeable, it's not an argument.
Yeah. No, I agree there. And that's why the charge of, well, another criticism of SE is, well, we're not trying to think how to phrase this. We're not proving our case. Mm. And I'm like, well, first of all, you fundamentally misunderstand SE.
We want people to see that an argument that can prove anything actually proves nothing.
Right. Right.
Right.
Saying your God did it makes just as much sense as saying a wizard did it.
Yeah.
Or the universe farting pixies created the universe.
And that's also that relates to a point that I've kind of developed in my own mind about when people want to make the case that God is unlimited in various ways, I see the infinitude stuff to be really problematic, because to me, a God that has no limits is actually no God at all. It's an entity that you don't have access to. It's an entity you could never discover it in the first place, and it's easier to defend something that has limits than one that doesn't.
Because it's impossible for a God to have no limits. It's impossible. The famous thing, can he create a rock that he can't lift, is proof that it's absurd to think that anybody, anything could be absolutely all-powerful.
That's why possible. That's why apologists like William Lane Craig have kind of modified the definition of omnipotence to
he did. Yeah.
what is logically consistent.
Yeah.
Okay, so he has limits. So then, how do we figure out what those limits are? That's the next question.
Well, you got to read the right holy book.
That's true. That's true.
Right.
That's like reading DC or Marvel to know which superhero is the strongest.
Well, you know what? I also kind of wonder. I know we have these common tropes about God being unlimited in certain ways: omnipotence, omnibenevolence, omnipresence,
and omniscience.
I'm kind of
there you are.
I'm kind of curious what verses they're using to support that, actually, because they tend to revert back to the Bible if somebody questions that, and I'm like, what are the verses that actually back that up? Because there are other verses that would actually be contrary to those.
Actually, I was a Bible teacher for over 35 years. I can guarantee you there's no scripture that does say that, and I can guarantee you that there are scriptures that say that God has regrets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, nuts, right? So often they'll say, "Well, God is unchanging," but yet, how many times did God, like when what was it with the Sodom and Gomorrah? That it's like, well, if you can find just like X number of people who are righteous, I'll spare the city. Or that kind of implies that Abraham could have, or Lot, or Abraham one could. I can't remember which. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, it was Lot. I think he said it to Lot.
Yeah. So. But it's also interesting going back to the the idea that Jordan brought up of a God with no limits. Shortly when I first started getting into SE, one of the first exchange I had a back and forth email exchange with my former high school science teacher, and he kept presenting me evidence of, well, now he believes in theistic evolution, so he's not a young Earth creationist, but he'd say, well, God had to start it because there's so many fine-tuned constants that therefore the universe had to be this way, and I wish I didn't think about it then. I try to remember how I responded back then, but now if I had to respond to that, I'd say, well, wait a minute, so you're saying that God could have only designed the universe with the value of c as 186,000 miles per second, or the value of g as whatever the gravitational constant is. I don't remember that value offhand.
Hey Vince, I told you people use this argument.
Yeah, you're right. You know what? I was thinking about our discussion, and totally.
I had a post about this.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. I didn't realize it was you that made the post, Jordan. But yeah, it's like, well,
the two of us had a comment stream.
Did the laws of thermodynamics limit the universe that God created? I mean, well, they say, well, God designed the limits. Well, why would God have limited himself?
And you know what? The interesting what I found is to people that have made that argument where God might have had to fine-tune things, I posit an alternative explanation, and the one that I posited was, what if those constants are what they are because they mathematically follow from something? And
there could be an undiscovered law of the universe that we haven't found out yet.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like they just kind of geometrically or mathematically relate to each other in some way that we haven't figured out yet, and so I would say they're mathematically necessary at what they are, and that's the alternative explanation I suggest as a possibility.
Well, see, I presuppose that Doug has to own a nuclear missile, and in order for Doug to own a nuclear missile, in order for that's a properly foundational belief, because I'm a properly functioning person. In order for Doug to own a nuclear missile, the universe had to be designed with these gravitational constants and other laws of thermodynamics, because otherwise there would be no Doug to own a nuclear missile. Oh, I'm sorry. I was going into Reformed epistemology mode there.
Reformed epistemology? What's that?
So for anybody who's not familiar, and I'm probably not the best person to explain Reformed epistemology.
Yeah, I'm not all too clear on it either.
Yeah, me neither.
It's essentially the idea that, to me, it kind of sounds like presuppositional apologetics, but there are a few key differences. Reformed epistemology is the idea that a believer has a proper sensus divinatus, because they have a properly functioning feeling that a God exists, and therefore a God belief is a properly foundational belief akin to something like the laws of logic.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, how did you determine that this feeling was true? I mean, to me, it's the same thing as just saying, well, I presuppose a God exists, else the universe wouldn't make sense, therefore God exists. And that's
so many people are locked up. So many people are locked up in nut houses thinking that they are properly functioning brains,
Right.
And that's where people like Cameron criticize SE because, well, it doesn't account. That's the other criticism he has, is it doesn't account for Reformed epistemology, so checkmate.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, you still have okay, just because I can't account for Reformed epistemology doesn't mean it's true. Just because I don't have an adequate response to it doesn't mean it's true. You still have to demonstrate that it's true. And so far you hadn't.
By the way, something that I've had kind of a question about is when the precepts like to question the relationship that we have between our minds and our bodies. They like to bring up the mind-body problem and how they relate to each other. And of course, they're never satisfied by like any attempts at a naturalistic explanation. My question back to them would be, what's the relationship between the metaphysical and the physical then? How do we get from the forms to the physical entities? What's that relationship there? And does it work both ways, or does it, what's the relationship? I don't have a clear idea on how that would even work. I'm not sure they do either.
Reformed epistemology, presuppositional apologetics is just that. It's an apologetic. It's a commitment to believing something and then coming up with ways to justify it later. Full stop.
Yeah. So according to the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and I put the link in the YouTube chat, Reformed epistemology, the central claim is that the RE is that religious belief can be rational without any appeal to evidence or argument. Is essentially what it is, and they're saying it's an alternative to evidentialism. Alvin Plantinga.
Yeah, Plantinga. Yeah.
The plant man. I call him the plant man.
I think the way that they would say it, I think, is they would say that if you have an experience that you've interpreted to be God, then that is warrant enough. They think that whatever interpretation comes to you is adequate to give you warrant for whatever belief it is. Something like that. That's the impression I got so far.
Yeah, the problem is any other world belief could use the same idea to justify their belief, but they would say no. But there's a fallen nature, there's sin, and that's why your warrant is corrupted, whereas my warrant is true or is valid.
Yeah, and Cameron likes to come back with the he calls the problem of the criterion, where he says, well, you can't prove evidentialism is true without presupposing evidentialism is true, and so you can't really distinguish between a universe that's 13.7 billion years old and one that was created 5 minutes ago with the appearance of 13.7 billion years of age. And to me, that's just simply falling back to appealing to hard solipsism. I mean, yeah, I cannot prove that this universe is not 5 minutes old, but I'm not going to accept that it's 5 minutes old unless somebody gives me evidence that it's 5 minutes old.
But like I try to keep reminding people who use these arguments, look, you didn't have a clue about any of this stuff when you first believed.
Yeah.
Did you know about Reformed epistemology when you became a Christian?
No.
Did you
I
know about
didn't.
presuppositional apologetics when you became a Christian? No. Why is it a big deal now? It's a big deal now because I think my theory is it's a way to justify believing things that are really hard to believe. And it's kind of like a hedge of protection around their beliefs.
We
Yeah.
just had somebody join us, Evolution False. Welcome to the Hangout.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
You wanna
Well,
introduce
Doug,
yourself?
I mean, everybody has core beliefs about the nature of reality that they resist falsification. So that's simply not true merely of Christians. That's true of people who have all worldviews, isn't it, Doug?
Hi, Darwin. How are you?
I am doing fine. Isn't it true that people have core beliefs as to the nature of reality and they resist falsification?
Say that again.
Isn't it true that everyone has core beliefs from which they interpret reality and that they resist falsification of those core beliefs?
Are you talking about presuppositions?
Yeah, you can call them presupposition, call them core beliefs, but that would be true of any worldview, right?
Yeah, I have presuppositions. What are yours?
Yeah. What is my presupposition? That the Christian God has revealed himself in time and space, ultimately through Jesus Christ.
Could you be wrong on that presupposition?
No.
I can't be wrong about mine either then.
Okay, well, how would you know that you can't be wrong about that?
How would you know that you couldn't be wrong about yours?
Because God has revealed that. His revelation does not fail to achieve its purposes.
Well, evolution has revealed it to me.
Well, does evolution require for its meaningfulness that there be laws of physics, chemistry, and biology?
Yes.
Are there laws of nature?
Yes. That we have
How do you
assigned
know-
to it, yeah.
How do you know there are laws of nature?
I
Hey,
presuppose it.
just I wanted to actually make a comment on this because I saw the first conversation you had here. Thank you for joining, by the way.
All right. I'd like to wrap it up with Doug. Doug,
Okay.
are there laws of nature merely because you started with from an arbitrary axiom?
Not merely. It's built up over the core propositions. It's not a mere proposition about presupposition.
When you say it's a presupposition that there are laws of nature, is that presupposition derived from anything else?
No, that's why it's a presupposition.
Is
Is
it
your presupposition
arbitrary?
that God exists? Is that derived from anything else?
Is it? Yeah, the knowledge that God exists would be derivative of God's revelation. Now, your presupposition that there are laws of nature, is that an arbitrary presupposition?
No, it's not arbitrary. Just like the nature of your God is
What-
not arbitrary.
What justifies your presupposition that there are laws of nature?
It's a properly held belief.
What does that mean?
That means that our experience is like when you and I look around, we see the universe. Now, could we be wrong about it? Maybe.
Hey, Garth, can I just?
Well, when you appeal, let me
concerning the laws
just
of nature-
respond. Yeah, listen, I'll be glad to address. Let me just respond to what he said.
Okay.
So you're telling me that your belief that there is a uniformity of nature, or that nature operates according to prescriptive laws, is justified and accounted for by sense perception?
No, I said it's a presupposition that the universe exists and has the nature it has.
Oh, well, wait a minute. You could presuppose that something exists. That is not the same concept of what is called the uniformity of nature, or that nature operates according to some prescriptive laws.
Do you believe in the
Now-
uniformity of nature?
Yeah, God has revealed that he has created an orderly and regular universe. Now, you
Well, hang on,
asserted that
hang on.
your
You
presupposition,
believe that-
I answered,
you believe in
I
miracles?
answered your question.
Darwin,
I
do you
answered
believe in
your question.
miracles?
Yeah, I'll address miracles momentarily, but I'd like to finish
If you
my
believe in
question.
miracles, you don't believe in uniformity of
Hey,
nature.
Doug. Okay, well, I would dispute that dichotomy.
I would love
Now-
to make a point on this.
Now, Doug,
It's really
Doug,
nice I can
you
see your face
stated-
today, Darwin.
Well, what you're doing? Well, that's not my picture. That's a TV singer.
It's great to be able to talk so
yeah.
fast and not let the other person answer.
So Doug, Doug's being a bit evasive here because he's uncomfortable with my question. Now, Doug, you told me that you hold to the uniformity of nature because it's a properly basic belief.
Yes.
Okay, are properly basic beliefs self-evident?
Yes, but you could be wrong.
Okay, so is the uniformity of nature self-evident?
So far, I'm hoping your God does a miracle in my life so I can.
How is the uniformity of nature self-evident? Is it self-evident to your sense perception?
Not just mine.
No, I'm asking you, when you adopt the uniformity of nature,
You know what, Darth?
without any reference to anyone else.
I just had an epiphany. I think I could be wrong about everything.
Okay.
You could be right. I should take on your worldview. Help me with that.
Okay, Doug. Now, you told me you presuppose the uniformity of
Darth,
nature as a
can you
properly
tell me
basic
about-
belief.
I want
Is
to.
it self-evident? Is it self-evident to your senses?
Darth, can we talk about Jesus? I want to take on your worldview.
Yeah, we can talk. We can talk about Jesus momentarily. Is the uniformity of nature
No. You should talk
self-evident
about
to your senses?
You have an atheist asking you, a Christian, to talk about Jesus, and you don't want to.
no, because they're deflecting.
Yeah,
Doug,
you're being Doug. You're being evasive.
Listen,
Now,
Doug.
you can laugh. You can laugh all you want, but it doesn't make you look good. Now,
Try
Doug,
me.
you hold to the uniformity of nature. Now, is the uniformity of nature evident to your senses?
That is such a deflection.
Is it evident to my senses?
Actually, Vincent, I haven't been deflecting. I've been sticking to the initial
No,
questions that I've asked. You're over
listen to me.
talking me, Vincent. Vincent, you're over talking me. I'll be glad to respond to you momentarily, but I'd like to wrap up this brief line of
But
questioning.
you know you're not going to wrap up. You're not going to wrap up.
Okay.
Because you have
Now,
a sense.
Doug,
I'm not going to argue.
is the uniformity of nature that you hold to, which is a prerequisite for your ability to reason and have reliable reasoning, is the uniformity of nature evident or self-evident to your sense perception?
Yes.
Just a reminder, I started a 10-minute timer for this exchange between Doug.
I would like to
We have about 7 minutes left.
Now, you know that's a circular response, Doug, right?
Yeah, it's virtuously
entirely circular.
It's virtuously circular, I would say.
Oh, really? So is virtuous circularity, does that have to do to an appeal to your final authority?
Yeah, just like Greg Bonson said.
What's your final authority that you're appealing to?
My presuppositions.
Okay, are those your presuppositions a product of your reasoning?
No, it's a product of
What's it a product of?
reasoning. It's a product of all our.
No, I'm asking you, when you say all, you'd have to reason that other people hold to that. So is your reasoning the ultimate authority?
It's not just mere reasoning, Darth.
Doug, is your reasoning the ultimate authority?
No, my presuppositions are.
Okay, how did you arrive at those presuppositions? Is it via your reasoning?
No, it's a properly held belief that, my reasoning could be wrong once in a while, just like yours could be.
Doug, you're being entirely evasive. Now,
hey, Darth,
your presuppositions, are they a product? Are they derivative? Are your presuppositions regarding the uniformity
can we talk about
of nature,
Jesus?
are they a product? Are
You're
they
a Christian,
derivative
right, Darth?
of your reason?
Darth, are you a Christian?
I asked you a question. I'll be glad to answer your personal questions momentarily, Doug.
No, I don't think
understand your evasiveness, Doug.
No.
Doug, you can smile and smirk all you want. I asked you a question. Are your presuppositions?
I'm wrong about everything, Darth. I'm asking for your help.
Now you're being sarcastic. Now I'm asking you a legitimate philosophical question, and you're trying to be cute.
About everything. Teach me, Darth. How do I accept your worldview?
Are your presuppositions contingent and derivative of your reason?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It's a properly held belief. I could be wrong in my presuppositions.
If any of your basic presuppositions are not derivative and contingent of reason, what would they be derivative of?
I don't know. Help me.
Well, so you don't know.
No, I don't know. Help me, Darth. Teach me the.
Those presuppositions that you hold to that are not within the domain of I don't know, would those presuppositions that are not be the product or be derivative of your reason?
Do you want to help me or not? Help me.
I'm asking you a question, Doug.
I have presuppositions that the universe exists. that it has
Yeah.
the nature that it has.
Are those presuppositions derivative and contingent upon your basic human cognition?
Yes, I would say yes.
Okay. Is your human cognition that produced those presuppositions, is your human reason the ultimate authority?
Yeah, we've already been through this. It's virtually
That's
virtuously
yes.
circular. It's virtuously circular.
All right. So how do you know that your human reason operates in a basically reliable way?
Well, we can test it.
No, that would be circular, Doug.
Okay, it's circular. Now help me understand your worldview.
Yeah. So in other words, are you
a Christian,
conceding?
Darth?
Are you? I'll answer in a second. Are you conceding?
That was a minute ago.
That
you said that.
Are you conceding that your advocacy, that your human reason is the ultimate authority? Are you conceding that that is circular?
Well, it's just not mine. It's all of humankind.
Is your reasoning circular?
My reasoning is based on my presuppositions.
Is your reasoning that your reason is the ultimate authority? Is that circular?
Sure, I'll say sure. Now help me understand your worldview.
Okay. So your reasoning then is not exhaustive of all facts, right?
Now let me. Sure, you can have everything. I'm just.
So you don't have So you do not have exhaustive knowledge. Therefore, your interpretations, which are derivative of your reasonings, they're not infallible.
Correct. Now can we talk about your worldview?
So when you reason that you're the final authority, that's not necessarily true.
I didn't
because
say
you don't
I
have
was the
exhaustive
final.
knowledge.
I didn't say I was the final authority. I said my.
No, you told me that your reason. No, you told me your reason, which produces your presuppositions, is the ultimate authority.
So, right? Can we talk about your worldview now?
Yeah, we can momentarily, because I just want to get to this final point. Is your reasoning, since your reasoning is the ultimate authority, but you don't have exhaustive knowledge, that means that your reasoning is fallible, right?
My presuppositions
is your reason fallible or infallible?
Are you a human being? Can you understand what I'm saying?
I think I am. The last time I checked, I'm not a Martian from Men in Black. So, Doug, is your reasoning fallible or infallible?
It is fallible. I could be wrong. Yes.
Okay, good. So you, as being that you're the ultimate authority, is just simply conjecture.
Oh yes, conjecture.
Good. Therefore, any affirmation that you make ultimately rests upon you conjecturing.
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
Now, can we talk about your worldview?
Sure.
So, are you a Christian?
Just remember, any affirmation. I'll answer any of your following questions, but any affirmation you make, you have conceded, and I will remind you that any affirmation you make is the product of conjecture.
That's fine. I won't make any claims. How's that?
Okay. I just want to make sure that that's what you said.
Yeah, that's fine.
Good. Good.
So, tell me, are you a Christian?
Yes, I am.
How many years?
Oh, gee, a very long time, many years, several decades.
So how old were you when you became a Christian?
Late teens, early 20s.
Okay, so when you were in your late teens, early 20s, did you know about the stuff you're talking about now?
In an extremely rudimentary sense.
So the day or the time period you became a Christian, what was going on in your life at the time? Like, what made you become a Christian?
I picked up my Bible and I started reading it.
Okay. And what about the Bible made you become a Christian?
I read the revelation of God and I accepted it.
How did you determine that was the revelation of God?
By reading the Bible.
Can I ask a quick question?
Just hang on, Jordan. He's been like pounding me with questions for a long time, and now he's finally letting me ask questions.
Right. We'll finish the timer and then I'll have a question.
Okay. So you became a Christian in your late teens, you read the Bible, and did you say that you, at that point in your life, determined that it was indeed the word of a God?
I'm not the one who verifies that things are the case. Only God can do that. I can only accept that which he reveals. Okay,
so you read the Bible and it was revealed to you that what you were reading was the words of God?
Yeah, the Bible is a revelation to mankind.
And how did you determine that that the Bible was a revelation to mankind?
I didn't determine. God is the one who ultimately verifies, and that's only done through either indirect or direct revelation.
And how do you know that that's what you just said is true?
Well, how do I know? That's a question about my theory of knowledge. One's theory of knowledge has to be worldview specific. I'm trying to answer your question.
Okay.
One's epistemology can only be derivative of your worldview. You can't have. I'm trying to answer you. Okay. One cannot have a meaningful and intelligible or viable epistemology were it not for the existence of the Christian God and all that entails.
Yeah, that's the reason why I asked you about, how much of this stuff, epistemology and definitions of knowledge and all that, how much did you know when you read the Bible at that time in your late teens?
Did I know all of the catchphrases, nomenclature? No, I didn't. But basically all I had to know was simply this: in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Therefore, everything that exists, I recognized was a derivative of God.
Now, could someone read a holy book, not yours, a different holy book, and say the same thing as you did? Well, this just has to be true because it was revealed to me as being true.
They could verbalize that.
But could they be correct?
People verbalize incoherencies all the time.
How do you know you haven't verbalized incoherencies?
Why? Because it comports with the mind of God.
And so if someone says that they've read a holy book that comports to the mind of their God, but it's not your holy book, could they be wrong?
Whatever does not conform and comport to the mind of God is false.
Okay, but let's say that the holy book that they're reading says that, this is the word of God. So they're reading a book, says this is the word of God. Could they be mistaken that what they're reading is from a God?
Okay, if it does not comport to the revelation of God, then it's false.
But it does, because it says in their holy book that these words comport to.
I'm referring to the revelation of God that is the Bible. If it doesn't conform to the mind of God as it was revealed in the Bible, then it is false.
Okay, so do you presuppose then that the Bible is the word of God?
Well, we've already been down this road in a previous conversation, but I'm glad to go over it again. I don't know if you remember that conversation.
Yeah,
do you remember?
Is it my turn now?
Okay, so my one of my ultimate commitments that you might want to label as a presupposition is that the Bible is the infallible and inerrant word of God. My adoption and acceptance of that is in virtue of God taking the taking the initiative and condescending to man and to communicating that.
Well, what did you say? You took the initiative?
No, I said my adoption and acceptance of that is the end result of God taking the initiative to communicate.
And he took the initiative because the Bible says so.
Well, on how would I be able to know something if it were not in virtue of either an indirect or direct revelation of God?
Right, but maybe there's a God, but it's not the one you worship.
Well, the problem with your question, and it is a good question, people ask it all the time, is how do you know? Well, in the Christian worldview, if you were to ask me, how do I know that the Bible is the word of God? Would be just the same if you said to me, how do you know that the dog is running in the backyard? Both of those questions could only be answered in virtue of some type of revelation of God. By the way, your screen's fuzzy, Doug. So whatever you ask me, how do I know how old I am? How do I know what time of day it is? How do I know that the Bible's the word of God? How do I know that Abraham walked on the earth? Whatever I know will be in virtue of being derivative of either an indirect revelation of God, which constitutes his creation, or a direct revelation of God. If I were to ask you, I'll be real quick. If I were to answer your question that I could know something that is independent of either an indirect or a direct revelation of God, that would be an incoherency insofar as the Christian worldview.
Okay, and so to sum up, at what, 18, 19 years old, you read the Bible, you saw this as true, God took the initiative, revealed to you it was true, and that's why you're a Christian.
I'm a Christian in virtue of the God of the Bible, and in fact, everything that exists, your headphones on your head, is in virtue of existing because it's derivative of the God of the Bible.
And there's no way you could be wrong, correct?
The concept of wrongness couldn't even exist were it not for the creation of God. You wouldn't
You're a
have
specific God.
No, without the Christian God, how would you be able to establish any wrongness?
So you can't think of any other explanation of establishing what wrongness or rightness. So therefore, your God exists, and it's true.
Well, in order to establish wrongness, there would have to be some logical absolutes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there logical absolutes?
Yeah. How
do you know that?
Well, I would say it's back to my presupposition, but I want to figure out.
Are your presuppositions
Darth,
a priori or a posteriori?
How do I become like you?
You need to repent.
Can I repent?
Yes, you can.
How?
You make a decision to change your mind about who you are and who God is, and that you're under the wrath of God. Once you repent, you're asking me a question. I'm explaining to you. Okay. If you were to ask me, how can I be cured of rabies? I would say to you, well, the first thing that you have to do is you have to change your mind about what your physical status is in terms of a rabies infection. So you first have to have a change of mind about your status. Then you have to realize that you're a dead man walking, and then you're going to have to reach out in trust to somebody who can administer the cure. That's an analogy of salvation in the Christian worldview.
How do I change my mind, though?
You have to make a decision of your will.
How do I do that?
How do you make any decision of your will? What did you have for lunch today?
But you see what I'm getting at.
Choice.
Like I am stuck in this position. So let's say your worldview is 100% correct. I'm stuck in this position, Darth, where I still don't believe it. So how can I repent to something that I don't even believe exists?
The reason why you don't believe it is because God says you're in rebellion. It's not because of your inability.
How do I stop rebelling?
You need to accept what the Bible says is vertical.
But I don't. So how do I get that?
Okay, and well, that the fact then what you're saying is that the revelation of God is not the revelation of God.
Right. How do I learn? How do I believe that?
Yeah, you choose to believe it. Why do you believe anything? Why do you believe? Okay, let me ask you a question. Why do you believe in the uniformity of nature?
Because it seems like every time I drop this pencil, it falls.
Okay, that's circular reasoning.
So
and not only that,
help me.
Hold on. I'm explaining to you that that's a fallacious answer because number one, it's circular. Number two, you are conflating cause and effect. The uniformity of nature would be the substrata that is producing the instance to which you refer to. So you are confusing cause and effect. So I'm going to ask you a question. Why do you adopt belief in the uniformity of nature when appealing to sense perception of an instance does not in any way justify the uniformity of nature? Because you know why? It's because chance could produce the same sequences as the uniformity of nature, couldn't it?
Sure. Have you ever converted someone to Christianity?
Yes, I have.
Really? Can I have their name to talk to them?
That's not it. That's not a rabbit trail I'm interested in going down right now. So I'm going to ask you a question.
Jordan, I took way too much time. Jordan wanted to ask you something.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, Doug, thanks for the conversation. I appreciate it.
Okay. I wanted to address the laws of nature issue. I don't know if you saw my comment, but in the chat.
Was that in the text?
It was in the text.
Just to let you know, I have 20 minutes and then I got to go out the door.
Okay. You mentioned that the laws of nature are prescriptive, I believe. Is that what you think?
No, I asked a question. I described that the uniformity of nature is that nature operates according to some prescriptive laws.
Okay, right. Okay, so you believe that the laws of nature are prescriptive.
I believe that God in his creation has ordained and providentially upholds that there are regularities in nature.
Okay. So do you understand the difference between something being prescriptive versus descriptive, right?
That's correct.
Okay, because my impression of, or my understanding of the laws of nature that have been established through scientific investigation, they're meant to be descriptive instead of prescriptive. Does that make sense?
Well, then it wouldn't be a law.
It's kind of, well, not in an objective sense, but from our perspective, it is.
It wouldn't be a law. All you would have is a series of consistencies, which could be accounted for equally by chance.
That's it right there. They're consistencies. That's why we call them laws.
No, but you see, the mistake that you're making is that you can't observe abstractions. Okay, the laws of nature, the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology are abstractions that extend beyond instances of what we observe. So by definition,
they are extrapolations, yes.
By definition, you cannot observe the laws of nature. You might infer, you might intuit, because you observe certain consistencies, that these consistencies are produced by laws which are an abstraction, but you can't observe those abstractions.
Yeah, they are inferences.
So do you believe that there are laws of nature?
I believe that there are things that are consistent in the universe.
Okay. Are you an atheist?
Yes.
Okay. Do you withhold belief in God because there's insufficient justification or evidence?
Yes.
Are you arbitrary on that criterion or consistent?
I think I'm consistent.
Okay. Do you use that for other core beliefs about the nature of reality?
Yes.
What's your justification that there are laws of nature?
As I understand the laws of nature to be, they are the patterns of consistency that we have found, and they are subject to revision if we discover.
What do you mean that you found them?
Well, not me individually, of course, but collectively, humans.
No, I'm asking you. Why do you accept it as the case that there are laws of nature? What's your justification?
It's that process of pattern recognition.
Okay, pattern recognition. Could those sequences be produced by chance?
What sequences do you mean?
Any sequence.
Yeah, that's what repeatability is meant to try to address.
Okay. Can chance occurrences produce any particular sequential arrangement?
Yes.
Okay, good. So when you say that a particular sequences is indicative of the laws of nature, you've just conceded that chance could produce it as well. Why do you choose the laws of nature versus chance?
Even though chance can do that, it's the point is that it's not likely if we see.
You don't want to go down that. You don't want to go down that road.
we have to balance.
Oh, okay. So
it has to be
really. Okay. Well, here's what you're not realizing. You're going to make several mistakes. First of all, you can't invoke probability because probability requires that it is the case that there is a uniformity of nature. So invoking a probabilistic assessment is a form of circular reasoning. Number two, if you invoke a probabilistic assessment, then you will have to give up your belief in the theory of evolution.
I don't understand why.
Okay, the odds of random mutations at a nucleotide level producing the codons of amino acids in a polymer producing a single protein. What is your understanding of what the probability is of producing even a simple protein? Just take a stab at it.
My understanding is that they are not produced by pure chance.
No, I'm not talking about spontaneous occurrence acausally. I'm talking about the specific arrangement of those mutations are deemed to be random, meaning that there are different deterministic events that intersect to produce a singular event. Now, the arrangement of the codons or nucleotides, and you can go to any evolution site, the arrangement of those nucleotides is deemed to be random. Now, what's the odds of the coding sequences for a simple protein being produced by a random generation of nucleotides? Do you have any idea? Because this comes back to the issue of probability.
Yeah, I know.
The answer would be it would be 1 in 10 to something to the effect of 200 or the 300th power. That's just for a simple protein.
Right. And
when we look at all the genomes combined, the improbability would be unimaginable in terms of the exponential notation. So if you're going to believe something because the converse would be highly improbable, then you're going to have to reject the theory of evolution. You cannot have your cake and eat it too.
Okay, but my understanding is that our genomes did not come about through a random assortment like that.
Okay, you didn't understand what I said. The arrangement of the nucleotides from all evolution sites is deemed to be random. What you are confusing is that through a step-by-step process of survivability or fitness, those random arrangements are produced and live to reproduce another day due to an increase of fitness. My point is simply this, not to divert the conversation onto a discussion of evolution, but since you do believe in evolution, the evolution of all the complex genomes on the planet is as astronomically improbable as anything could potentially be imagined, yet you believe in it. But you told me that you believe in the uniformity of nature because its negation would require you to believe that something that is astronomically improbable. So you have an inconsistency here.
Well, unlikely things happen all the time, right?
Excuse me?
Unlikely things happen all the time, right? Improbable things, they happen all the time, right?
Yeah. Well, that would depend on your worldview. See, you wouldn't be able in your worldview as an atheist to even actually instantiate a probabilistic assessment of anything.
Well, okay, here, let me try to ask the question a little differently. If I were to roll a die, a 20-sided die, for example, I like Dungeons and Dragons, and I got a natural 20 on my first roll. There's only a 1 in 20 chance of getting that, right? So you could say it's unlikely compared to the possibility of getting one of the other sides, but it happened anyway. So the fact that it's unlikely that we got here through evolution, the fact is we did.
Well, my point is not to debate evolution. If you want to save that for another conversation, that's fine. My problem is this: you have no basis to appeal to any probabilistic assessment because you cannot instantiate that there are any non-variables or absolutes. In order to have a probabilistic assessment, you have to have access to background information. That background information has to include what are the non-variables with the variables. You don't have access to that. Nor can you establish that there are non-variables. Do you know of any absolutes that exist?
It depends on what you mean by that, but
Well, how are you going to invoke the meaningfulness of any probabilistic assessment in your atheist worldview if there are no absolutes?
How long have you been listening to this? Just to preface this answer, have you been watching the whole time?
No.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, are there any absolutes?
I would say there can be.
No, I didn't ask you if there can be. I said, do they exist?
What do you mean by exist?
Okay. Are there any absolutes extended in time and space, or if you want, outside of time and space? Are there any absolutes?
I cannot know if they are in time and space.
Okay. Do you know that any absolutes exist?
Yes.
What could you name one, please?
They're conditional, but any absolutes that necessarily follow from axioms, those exist.
Is an axiom an arbitrary starting point, or is it justified?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say they're arbitrary, but
well, if your axioms are arbitrary, then your invocations of absolutes would therefore be arbitrary as well. So, do you have any other absolutes that exist?
I don't really know. I'm not sure.
Well, if you can't instantiate that they're absolutes, then how do you have a foundation for logic and reason?
I mean,
if you cannot establish that there are any absolutes, how can you even reason for the efficacy of evolution when evolution requires that there be non-variables or some temporal or universal absolutes, such as laws of nature? If you can't establish the laws of nature, how can you say that there are processes which depend on laws of nature? So you don't know that there are absolutes. You don't know that there are any laws of nature. So what do you base your ability to reason as an atheist on? Is it blind faith?
I'd have to say the laws of nature are our best guess. Basically, they are the
okay. So your ability to reason as an atheist, to withhold belief in God, ultimately rests upon arbitrary conjecture.
I wouldn't say they're arbitrary.
Well, you told me they are guess.
They're educated guesses.
Oh, okay. Are these guesses? Do they have a justification as their foundation?
Yeah, they're justified by the pattern recognition.
Okay, pattern recognition, you're forming a conceptual abstraction as to what a certain sequencing means. Do you know that a particular sequence is indicative of laws versus chance?
Sorry, ask that again.
When you talk about pattern recognition, you're talking about particular sequencing of particulars. Is a specific arrangement of particulars? Is it absolutely indicative of laws, or could it be produced by chance as well?
If there are laws, then they would necessarily follow them.
No, I'm asking you the question. Is any particular sequence absolutely indicative of laws of nature, or could that particular sequencing be the product of a causal randomness?
They could be random.
So you don't know.
Yeah.
So there goes your pattern recognition, goes right out the window.
Well, no, not really.
Yeah, no, really, because then you have no foundation to say what that sequencing means.
Sure we do.
No, you don't. And I'm not trying to be glib. Listen, I'm not trying to be glib.
Yeah, that's fine. But do you have something better to?
I'm not trying to be glib.
Do you have
what do you mean?
something
Do I have
better to
something
go
better?
off of?
Oh well, the Christian worldview, God has revealed Himself. He's revealed Himself to you and to me through Adam, Noah,
I'm
Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Learning the laws of nature, though.
Okay. Well, if you don't start from the God of the Bible, then how are you going to have knowledge about anything? Could you tell me that?
I don't know. Knowledge to me is awareness, and I have awareness.
Awareness of what? You mean sense perception?
That's part of it. Yeah.
Okay. Why would sense perception be a meaningful concept if there were not a law of causality?
Descriptively?
Okay, would sense perception, which you have typified as awareness, would sense perception be a meaningful concept if it was not the case that there was a principle or law of causality?
I don't think the law of causality is prescriptive.
I didn't say that it was prescriptive. I said, would the concept of awareness, which is sense perception in your view, would sense perception be a meaningful concept if there was not a law or principle of causality?
No, it wouldn't be meaningful if there was no causality.
Okay, good. Is there a law of causality?
Sure.
How do you know that?
Same answer as before.
What is it?
It's the inference I'm making.
An inference based upon what?
My experience.
Yeah, but you're presupposing that your experience is meaningful. Experience and sense perception is only meaningful if causality exists. I asked you, does causality exist? You said yes. I said, how do you know? And then you just gave me a nondescript response. So how do you know that there's a law of causality?
When you say meaningful, what do you mean by that?
Well, would sense perception be a meaningful concept if we lived in a chance universe where all events were discrete and there were no causal connections between events? The concept of sense perception would then be rendered as meaningless. Perception.
But when you say meaningless, what do you mean?
It means it wouldn't be intelligible. Sense perception for its meaningfulness. I'm not saying it's not intelligible going back and forth in this conversation. I'm talking about meaningfulness and intelligibility against the backdrop of what the ultimate nature of reality is. Now, in order for you as an atheist to have a meaningful and intelligible invocation of sense perception, then the law of causality would have to exist, because if it doesn't exist, then an invocation of experience and sense perception is rendered meaningless. So I asked you, does causality exist? And you said yes. Good. How do you know? Do you have blind faith that there's causality?
I wouldn't say it's blind, but it's kind of
okay. Then what's your justification that there's causality?
I have warrant to believe it because of my experience.
What's your warrant? See, again, you're going full circle. When you say experience, you're referring to your sense perceptions. So your sense perceptions don't justify causality. So
no. They don't justify causality itself, but they justify my belief in it. That's what I'm saying.
No, because your experience could be the product of a chance universe.
I don't think it is, though.
It doesn't matter what you think. Do you know that? Is something true just because you merely have a form of belief?
No.
Okay, good. So what's your justification that there's a law of causality in order for the concept of experience and sense perception as you invoke it in your worldview? How is it meaningful? How do you justify there's a law of causality?
I don't know how else to answer the question other than how I already have.
Well, the answer you gave is entirely circular.
Embrace the circularity.
Yeah. Well, is circular reasoning, when not appealing to an ultimate and final authority, is it fallacious? Well, the answer is yes. Now, if you want to invoke that you appeal to a final authority, I'm all game for that. Go for it. And then we'll examine what your final authority is. You see, you told me that your disbelief in God was because God was not justified. Now, you believe in causality, but you don't have a justification for causality. So you should withhold belief in causality on the same criterion that you disbelieve in God, because there's insufficient justification. You told me that was a consistent criterion that you use.
Hold on, I have an experience of causality that I don't have of God. That's my issue.
No, that's begging the question when you say you experience causality.
Yeah, I'm taking a shortcut, but yeah, it's basically the same thing, though.
No, that's begging the question. So do you have a justification for causality? Because you told me you withhold belief in things that you don't have justification for. Remember, I'm applying your criterion of atheism.
Okay.
So when you step up to the plate and you tell me as an atheist that you can reason about things and that by virtue of reason, you withhold belief in God because God is not justified. And remember, God would be the ultimate nature of reality, right? So you withhold belief in the ultimate nature of reality, namely God, because God is not justified. Well, if you can reason and you withhold belief in God as the ultimate nature of reality, then something else must be the ultimate nature of reality, right?
When you asked about the ultimate, are you asking how I figure out what the ultimate nature of a reality is?
Okay. In the Christian worldview, the God of the Bible is the ultimate nature of reality, right?
What does that mean?
It means that he is the origin and the source of everything that exists, and everything depends on it. Okay, so if you withhold belief in God, you reject belief in God as the ultimate origin and source of reality due to an insufficient justification. So if the God of the Bible, in your view, is not the ultimate nature of reality upon which something depends, then you must have in mind some other ultimate nature of reality, right?
Okay.
What would that be?
Oh, is time out, Tim?
Yeah, I was about to say time's up.
Okay.
So you don't have any justification for your ultimate nature of reality, which you would need to instantiate to claim that you can reason to withhold belief in God. So you have an arbitrary criterion. You withhold belief in God because you say he's not justified, but when it comes to your ultimate belief as the nature of reality, you don't have a justification. So you, sir, are arbitrary.
I just want to wrap up, and I want to wrap up and just say I can't believe in God.
Your thought, then we really got to wrap
up. And I'm currently, I have no idea what God is to you. So we'll have to call it there.
I didn't understand what you said, because there was. Could you repeat your last two sentences?
Yeah, I can't believe in God if I don't even know what he is, and unfortunately, I don't know what you even mean by God anymore.
But then you have a belief in the ultimate nature of reality, but you don't know what that is, do you? Do you know what the ultimate nature of reality is?
Are you saying you know what that is?
No, you told me you don't believe in God because you don't know what God is. Do you know what the ultimate nature of reality is that provides you with the ability to reason?
If that's what God is by definition, then he's
no.
not
I ask you, do you know what the ultimate nature of reality is that provides you with the ability to reason?
Okay, well, we really need to cut this at this point.
No, I don't know what it is. Sorry.
Okay, good. Then why do you believe it?
Well, that was cool.
I believe that it was just revealed to me that I need to eject him because he simply wanted to keep talking.
No. The problem is that why I started playing guitar in my corner and didn't even participate. It's because we don't need to justify. We are not sure of everything.
Yeah.
So we don't need to justify. The problem with this.
That's why I was confused by his question.
Yeah, and that's his point. His point is to confuse you because they have a stenciled argument. They lead the questions. They absolutely lead every question, so that you are either confused or you answer to a question that they will use your answer later on.
Well, and I apologize.
It's absolutely dishonest, and I'm glad because I found my solo now. It's good.
I apologize. I let that go way too long. I was trying to be gracious, but
no, he's I'm sorry. He's just like every apologist. Precepts is that they are trying to lead you into their own definition of what reality is, what God is. The truth is, they have a circular reasoning, and like Cy ten Bruggencate, which is a nice guy. I mean, but he even says it himself. There's nothing wrong with.
I would disagree that Cy 10 is a nice guy, but
well, I mean, he makes me laugh because I criticize him a lot, and he's been pretty good at accepting my.
Yeah, speaking of people that go out on the street and try to take advantage of the weak-minded, right? Cy 10 likes to do the same.
Just remember one thing, and I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but you have no justification to give. All you have to say is, I'm not sure of anything. What I see is that you're sure of anything, so please enlighten me with your certitudes.
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah,
and that's why I was originally keen on letting Doug continue with him because Doug was trying to, it became very clear when Doug was talking to him that he was not interested in defending his beliefs.
First of all, he totally filibustered Doug at first, and then when it was Doug's turn, he didn't really have answers. So
I still found that exchange kind of useful, though. I'm glad that I had it, but you're right. It was as educational as that was.
Well, see, but Jordan, when he asks you questions like, "How do you know?" Like, you got to be very clear what you mean by the word "know."
Yeah, and I kind of avoided even using the word almost.
Yeah, his definition of "know" is different than your definition of "know."
It is.
Yeah.
It's. I know I'm going to repeat my leitmotif, but my leitmotif is conviction is not knowledge.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, and it's like I put in the chat. Is there any belief that you cannot justify by presupposing that it's true?
Exactly.
What I would love to, I don't even know if Darth would even allow me to ask these questions in a row, but I would love to ask him questions like, well, how would your life be different if hypothetically you became a non-believer, a non-Christian 5 years from now? What would change in your life? I would love to ask him, what can I look forward to if I accept your worldview? What are the positives and what are the negatives if I don't?
Yeah.
I would love to ask him, do you really believe a snake talked in Genesis 1? Do you really believe a man lived in the belly of a fish? Do you really believe that Jesus said that the Israelites could take virgins for themselves? Do you really believe these things? I would love to get into like just a little tiny questions like that.
You know what I want to do? I want to bring up Gödel's incompleteness theorems next time. If I interact with him again, I want to bring that up because I don't think he has an answer for that.
What is it now?
Gödel's incompleteness theorems, the flaw with formal systems, something that I don't think precepts have an answer to. They really don't.
He won't answer. He'll just say that the whole idea is ridiculous because it has nothing to do with the revelation from God.
But there's a logical proof for it, and that's the problem.
That's true. That's true. I agree with you. Don't get me wrong. I totally agree with you. I'm just saying that you're talking to a wall.
Yeah.
He understands.
Go ahead.
Darth and I have talked before, and he mentioned it, and I even did a video critiquing myself talking to him. And
I saw that, yeah.
He knows that I know what he's doing, and he knows that that I agree with him that there is an infinite regress on how do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know that? And at some point, you have to stop and just presuppose. And this is what he was trying to do with you, Jordan. And at some point, you just have to admit, yes, I presuppose that the universe is real and exists and that the laws of nature exist and so forth.
Yeah, I didn't go out and say that's what I'm presupposing, but that was technically what I was doing, yeah.
Yeah, and now he would say that that's a bad presupposition because that properly basic belief, how do you know that that's a good properly basic belief? Like he would say, no, the presupposition has to go back one further, and that is my God. And my God, not any other gods. No, just mine.
Right.
And so I wanted to get him to talk about Revelation, but he avoided that because of our conversation last time. That's where he stumbled.
Well, and that's why I don't find, and maybe we can talk about this. I know we're running way over time, but maybe I would love to kind of break down SE responses to presuppositionalism, because right now I don't even engage with them.
I tried. I promise you, I tried. And the conversation ended like this. I said, you presuppose, I admit I presuppose. You think my presupposition is wrong. I think your presupposition is wrong. Now where do we go from there? And they have no answer because there's nothing,
Right. Well, you're just suppressing the revelation. That's their answer.
Well, that's
how do they determine that? Through the same revelation.
Yeah.
I mean, I love how he called Jordan's reasoning circular, and he's like, circular reasoning is bad unless it's my circular reasoning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that makes no sense. They're not. They are largely precepts are largely not honest interlocutors, and that's why I really just don't bother.
The only
should have given him that much time, and I apologize.
Is precepts. They're the only people I don't debate with.
Well, I think the biggest contradiction in their worldview is what I was trying to get with them. How do I become like you?
Yeah.
Well, Doug, just choose it. Just choose it.
Yeah.
Well, how do I do that? I don't believe. How do you need to give me something? Convince me. And ultimately it comes down to, he believes that only if his God reveals to himself to the human first, he's the prime mover, he's the first mover in this whole beliefs idea. If he's right, if his worldview is right, all us guys are screwed unless God does something in us first. And he if you're listening, Darth, you know this is true.
Yeah. I noticed that too.
I found the Calvinist.
You know, the funny thing, even Ozzy pointed that out. The funny thing about precepts is that they have to first presuppose, and I thought you were going to go there when he talked about the Bible. They have to first presuppose that the writers of the Bible were saying the truth when they were saying that they were inspired by that God. And how do you know if the book was true? You look at what they say in comparison to history, science, and all that. And in the first chapter of the Bible, it says that God created the stars, the sun, and the moon on day 4, after the earth, after vegetation even. So what I'm saying is that I always say I don't have a problem with the concept of God, because that his ontology is really, it doesn't matter. What matters is what the men said that wrote the Bible, because it is human writing. So he has to acknowledge first that he accepts the Bible, human writing, and he has to accept that they said the truth, that they were not just inventing things. God comes really much after that, but they won't answer. They won't answer that. They will just, But
Tim, I'm actually glad that you let him on as long as you did, because
I was just getting a lot of flack about it in the chat.
No, and Darth, if you're listening to this, I want Christians all around the world to hear you talk.
Oh yeah.
And for the record, I did not boot Darth because of what he was saying. I booted him because I set a time limit multiple times, and he continued to exceed that time limit, and he just wanted to get his script in. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm done. I respectfully try to give a set time limit. I said, okay, let's cut it out, and he just kept on going.
They're theocratic.
If Darth tries to tell anybody I booted him from this because I was scared of his beliefs or whatever, that's not why I booted him. If it was somebody talking about a different belief that was not being respectful and following the time limits and all that we set.
Well, he said he had 20 minutes left anyhow, so.
Well, so he was lying then, right? Because he went past. He said he had to be out the door in 20 minutes.
I wouldn't say he's lying, but it was close. When the time you booted him, the time he said he had to go was pretty close to the same. So I don't think he was sad that you.
Well, okay, I see your point.
So that the mathematics thing I've been talking about earlier, Gödel's incompleteness theorems aren't the only ones. In fact, more recently, I believe, there was an incompleteness theorem that basically came up that corresponds with it, or kind of relates to it, is that if you think of pure mathematics being all mathematical relationships that there are, we don't have access to them because there is an infinite number of them. And the only way we even get some of them is through axiomatic formal systems. So if there's no set of axioms that we can use to access this infinite source of information, it's basically like saying we don't have access to infinity. So if God is infinity, we don't have access to him ever.
I see.
But these are all theoretical, hypothetical type concepts that when the rubber hits the road, it's not going to make a difference, Jordan. Like, I think a guy like Darth believes what he believes because he has this deep need, capital N-E-E-D, need for certainty, right, and need for explanation. And this is where all this stems from. Like, that's why I went back to when he was a teenager. He admitted he didn't know a lot of this stuff when he became a Christian. There is a need in him that this belief satisfied.
Yeah, Doug, I would really like to talk to that person who claims he converted through precept.
Well, I asked for a name, like just.
I'm not going down that rabbit hole. Yeah,
I have a hard time believing that.
Me too. I don't believe it at all.
I'm not saying he's lying, but I if anybody's listening to this in the replay and you were an atheist or a non-believer or a Hindu, whatever, and you became convinced with what Darth was saying, this precept type argument, let me know. I would love to pick your brain and talk to you.
I don't want to be too critical, but I do question his sincerity, because I'll tell you why. All the precepts I've seen some that were sincere. I'm not saying he's insincere, but there is the way they argue is insincere. They have stencil, They will filibuster you. They will lead you to answer things you don't really want to answer, but they will push you to answer so they can use that later against you. It is dishonest, and I don't believe they're sincere at all.
You know what kind of clued me into the fact that he's dishonest? The fact that I got the impression, anyway, he understands what natural selection is. He understands how it works.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that if he knows anything about biology, he knows that natural selection can work with that. He's right there. He could accept evolution, but he's choosing not to.
He's a flat earther.
Yeah, if you want, is he a flat earther? Really?
No, I mean he's like a flat earther.
Oh, like a flat earther. Yeah.
The two categories I refuse to debate with.
Yeah, I don't even. I mean, the only way I found, as far as flat earthers go, the only way I found to really even start with them, and this is not my original idea, but somebody put in the SE Facebook group, they put in there, because oftentimes the flat earthers I've encountered, they believe everything, all the evidence is fake. Anybody who's circumnavigated the globe, all the sailors who've sailed on submarines and surface vessels who've crossed the equator and gone all over the globe, everybody's in on it, and all the evidence is fake. The only way I found to really even try to go there is, okay, how did you determine that these flat earthers were right then? If there's so much disinformation out there, how do you know they're correct? If all the media, if all the government agencies, if every sailor who's ever sailed across the ocean, if they're all in on this global conspiracy, this global lie, how can you trust anybody?
That's great.
Especially the authors of the Bible.
The best way to deal with conspiracy theorists and flat earthers and so forth is get a bunch of them in a room together and start talking about the details, and they're going to disagree on things. And it's,
yes.
But the thing about precepts, one thing about precepts, and I know we need to. I know I've got to wrap this up. I appreciate everybody staying over.
Yeah, thanks for streaming for this long, man.
Yeah, no problem. So, if you're really going to go down the rabbit hole of, well, how do you know causality is true? Well, I observe it, but your observations could be wrong. Blah 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 blah. Okay, if you're doubting your very perception of reality, then how do you know that your revelation was not just some internal hallucination? How do you not know? I mean, it works both ways. And it's to me, it's really a big steaming pile of special pleading. And he even said it. He said, circular reasoning, unless it's my circular reasoning, is invalid. Okay, we still need to demonstrate that. And that's why I'm with Vincent. I almost feel like an aneurysm coming on when I'm dealing with precepts.
well, I've talked to a lot of precepts, and a lot of them I can have good conversations with. But Darth is he's a troll. He's basically not a good precept to talk to because he's not interested in. I really don't even think he cares about my salvation. Darth, if you're listening, do you really care about me? Like, do you really want me to believe what you believe, or do you just?
If he did, the moment you asked him to tell you about Jesus, he would have changed direction.
Yeah, this is why I always do it when you're on talking to a precept and they start talking about this presupposition type shtick. Go immediately to Jesus. And every Christian out there listening, watching it unfold, if they see the precept says, well, okay, we'll talk about Jesus in a second, but let me first say this. That is a red flag to every Christian watching. And Darth, you know this if you're listening to this replay. You know there's Christians watching, and you just dissed Jesus in front of an atheist. You said, no, we'll talk about Jesus later. I want to get this precept stuff out first.
And he says you just have to choose it. Well, how do you choose something? How do you choose something if you're not convinced is true? That's like me saying, well, the flying spaghetti monster revealed to me that the moon's made out of cheese, and you just have to choose to accept that truth before it can be made clear to you. It won't make sense to you until you choose to accept it.
There's a question I thought would be wonderful to ask, which is, what made you fall in love with Jesus? I just want to have that kind of conversation.
I'd first ask him if he does love Jesus, or if he's just in love with the idea of a God first cause type thing.
I would think that the emotional attachment kind of came from that, but Yeah, I would want to ask, like, what is it about Jesus that you are so infatuated with? That's what I want to know who he is as a person. Because
you know what?
Whatever he likes in Jesus is what he values, right? I want to know what his values are.
But he won't answer, and I'll tell you why. Because the problem with the precepts is they, I think, I forget the quote exactly. I'll try to find it. But Cy ten Bruggencate, he said that he didn't care about convincing others. They only care about preaching and condemning. Yeah, all they want to say is repent. That's the only. Remember, I don't know what the quote is. You might remember. I don't remember. But I remember that his goal is not to converse. It's to condemn and to judge,
to obey.
Basically. Yeah, and to obey.
Their goal is to obey the word of God, which is which says preach the gospel.
Right.
Which, Darth, you're not really preaching. You're preaching presuppositionalism, not the gospel of Jesus Christ, the good news of salvation through. So, you did mention repentance, but
yeah, he's going.
That was a compulsion. He did mention it as a compulsion.
And can presuppositionalism can that be used to claim any other god or pantheon to be true?
Yeah,
I could just as easily presuppose the existence of Zeus and say that he's just suppressing the knowledge, his inborn knowledge that Zeus exists, and there will be thunderbolts hurled at him if he does not repent and change his ways. And the great oracles and Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey, they all reveal the truth of Zeus. And if you just would just accept that and choose to believe it, it goes back to what Vincent and I, you and I were talking about, where if the argument is interchangeable, it's a crappy argument.
Yeah, exactly. It's terrible. Their argumentation is not an argument. Actually, it's an
assertion.
Yeah, it's an assertion.
It's all blind assertions, or bald assertions, I should say.
Exactly.
Yeah, my advice, my final advice, when dealing with the precept, is go immediately to Jesus.
That's a good idea.
And if they resist, they look like dorks within their worldview, and ask them how can they believe like they believe. And they'll stumble with that too, because they know that only their God can fill you with the Holy Spirit to believe like they do. So go Jesus and regeneration, those ideas and concepts, and they really like.
And I like how you probed at how he arrived at how did he first arrive at the belief, and I find it really, really unconvincing that he just picked up the book, read it, and was convinced, and just learned all these precept arguments without being told by another precept. I doubt that. I mean,
no, yeah, the precept arguments came later. Probably after he started doubting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they are so scripted. They are so scripted. All their arguments. It's like when you debate with one, you debate with all. They have a scripted way.
Yeah, he asks the same questions.
Yeah, and how do you know that and all that? Yes. Yeah.
If you go off script at all, he goes nuts, and he
gets it from Greg Johnson or somebody like that who bastardized that other guy.
And they have this pseudo philosophy. They love to push you into philosophy, and I don't go there with them because their message is the one of Christ normally, and that is not a philosophy. In fact, Paul warned the Christians against philosophy in his letter to the Romans. I forget, but so philosophy is not a Christian way to go if you go that way. Okay, it's not something I like philosophy, but the Christian shouldn't be pursuing it, and they do that totally missing the point of Jesus. And like Doug says, that's a good. I'll use that. I'll use that Jesus thing. Yeah.
Jesus thing.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and...
I'm definitely glad Doug was here. That makes me feel...
Yeah, I'm glad Doug joined too, because Doug's probably out of the four of us had the most experience with precepts.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think it's because Doug actually reaches out to apologists and preachers and stuff, where you're more like... the believer on the street, you're highly unlikely to run into a precept, especially a Calvinist precept.
No. And I like about Doug too, and I don't want to be, brown nosing you, but you have progressed too. Your videos have got sharper as you're
evolving.
Evolving, yes.
It's all the gamma rays from his nuke.
It's gamma rays. He's evolving at an accelerated rate.
Oh, very,
Well,
very good. I love it.
Thanks everybody for joining. I know we went a bit longer than scheduled, and
Thanks, buddy.
sorry for letting Darth kind of well, he didn't really monopolize it as much. We did keep it one-on-one for the most part. Last time it was a complete free-for-all, and it really.
Besides, I got to play guitar a little bit. That's perfect.
Yeah, I think it was better this time than it was.
Hey guys, this week I'm having Robert Price, Dr. Robert Price, historian, on.
Oh, really?
And, yeah.
Oh, that should be good to watch.
I'll post something later, and then I'm also talking to a pastor slash apologist on Friday. I'll post something about that too, so that'll be fun.
Oh,
all right. Well, thanks, Doug, Vincent, Jordan.
Thanks,
thank you
guys.
all for joining, and Reed as well. I know Reed had to drop because of technical issues.
Goodbye. Goodbye. Wow. Oh, why do I have that sound? I'll tell you why. Because the pick was on.
Because Doug's nuke revealed to me that your pick was off.
It was.
See you guys.
Good night.